A graduate student loses his life in a fire, only to awaken inside the body of an otaku. There is just one issue: that otaku happens to be a minor side character from a manga. And the worst part, he never finished reading the entire series. Now, he is trapped inside a school harem story with no clue who ends up winning in the end. His plan? Stay far away from the protagonist and survive life as an ordinary background character. Because of that, he spends an entire year training until he builds the physique of an absolute human fortress. The outcome? Everyone at school is terrified of him. This story is absolutely amazing. Don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. And without wasting any more time, let's jump straight into the video. The protagonist begins the story drenched in cold sweat, completely overwhelmed by the bizarre situation he finds himself in. At that very moment, a blonde girl confesses her feelings to him and reveals that she is also a huge manga enthusiast. At the same time, a red-haired girl grabs his hand and asks how things ever escalated to this point. Right after that, a third girl wearing a kimono appears and mentions that all she ever wanted was a peaceful, ordinary life. As if things were not chaotic enough, an energetic blue-haired girl suddenly joins the scene. But it turns out the entire situation was nothing more than a dream. Without warning, he jolts awake and points ahead, completely unable to understand what is happening. The young man named Kim opens his eyes in terror as he calls out for his teacher. His heart pounds wildly as he turns his head, desperately searching for his instructor. He finds himself lying in a hospital bed, covered in injuries, wondering where he is. A man then asks whether he remembers anything that happened before the accident. Instantly, memories of a blazing fire surface in his mind, where he had been trying to save his research data. Because of that memory, the young man realizes he is in a hospital, although he still has no idea why. Suddenly, his eyes widen after noticing something extremely unusual. The young man picks up a reflective object to examine his own appearance. In that instant, he is startled to discover that the face staring back at him is not his own. With his memories completely tangled together, he gradually pieces together what happened. Eventually, he realizes that he has ended up inside someone else's body. The original owner was Kim, a high school student of Japanese and Korean descent. Apparently, the boy had been involved in a car accident and remained unconscious for several days. And so, the protagonist who died during the fire inherited the young man's body. The boy feels relieved because he has finally escaped his miserable life as a graduate student. Even so, he believes it would be foolish to let his guard down, since anything could still go wrong. After arriving at his new home, he wonders how he is supposed to adjust to this completely different life. His new mother tells him to get plenty of rest, and he heads upstairs. As he reaches the entrance to his new room, it feels as though his body already recognizes the place. The young man feels uneasy about invading another person's personal space and carefully steps inside. However, the moment he opens the door, he is completely stunned by the sight before him. His eyes grow wide as he struggles to believe what he is seeing. The room is filled with countless anime posters and collectibles. At that moment, he realizes that the previous owner of this body had been a genuine otaku. The discovery leaves him speechless as he comes to terms with the fact that the room belonged to a devoted anime fan. The situation confuses him so much that he remains seated on the floor while a strand of hair sticks up dramatically. Anime physics working overtime. He starts questioning whether he can truly continue living while pretending to be Kim. The protagonist thinks that acting differently might make his parents suspicious, but he knows absolutely nothing about these hobbies. With no idea what to do next, he studies one of the posters on the wall and notices something odd. After taking a closer look, he realizes that the character in the illustration bears a striking resemblance to Kim. The discovery shocks him so much that he loses his balance and falls backward. He cannot believe that the poster belongs to such a specific manga series. Cold sweat runs down his face as he wonders if this could somehow be an elaborate trap. To confirm his suspicions, he checks the bookshelf and finds manga from every genre imaginable, ranging from action to romance. He then picks up a volume featuring a particularly unusual cover and an eye-catching title. The protagonist feels that the character on the cover looks familiar, and before long, he remembers where he has seen it before. He then recalls Scramble Love, a shoujo manga that sold more than 10 million copies. The series followed all the classic romantic comedy formulas and earned tremendous praise because of it. However, the original ending completely disregarded every major heroine. The fandom erupted in outrage when the unexpected conclusion crowned the childhood friend as the winner. Yes, the internet survived, barely. After noticing so many similarities, he decides to read it to determine whether it is truly the same story. As he continues reading, his shock intensifies until he finally exclaims, "This is a crime." The story frustrates him so much that he cannot stop himself from shouting aloud. The following day, he is at a restaurant and admits that the manga was incredibly entertaining, to the point that he spent the entire night reading it. His mother then appears and asks him to help serve the customers for a while. He responds somewhat awkwardly, but she does not seem to notice, while the boy is surprised to realize that he works there. As the restaurant owner's son, he puts on an apron and starts greeting customers. Suddenly, he stares at the new arrivals with complete astonishment. He has an overwhelming feeling that he has seen those two people somewhere before. The blonde girl excitedly declares that she plans to feed him and that there is no escaping her. Possessive mode activated. She then calls out the young man's name while he appears increasingly uneasy about the entire situation. The moment Kim hears that name, he freezes as everything starts falling into place. He then realizes that those two individuals are characters from the manga Scramble Love. Unable to believe it, the protagonist confirms that the boy is Sakamoto Ryuji, the hero of the story. He remains motionless while observing them, realizing that this is not merely a case of possession. With his heart racing, the young man understands that he has become part of the world inside a book. To stop himself from completely losing his sanity, he decides to mentally organize everything that has happened. He remembers that he was once a graduate student, but after the fire, he ended up taking over Kim's body. To make matters even worse, Kim is nothing more than a side character in the manga Scramble Love. Everything happened because of that very manga he spent the entire night binge reading without taking a single break. The problem is that he never actually finished Scramble Love, meaning he has absolutely no advantage in this situation. Even though he is inside a fictional story, everything feels frighteningly real, and the central romance could still unfold exactly as intended. Because of that, he decides that as long as he stays away from Sakamoto Ryuji, the manga's protagonist, everything should be fine. With that strategy in mind, the young man plans to live peacefully as nothing more than a background character. To achieve that goal, he studies every book he can find in the room so that he can imitate Kim perfectly. He even managed to enroll in a prestigious private academy located far from home, thanks to a full scholarship. After entering the school, he also became actively involved in the student council's activities. However, despite all of that, the possession never disappeared, and it seems he will have to continue living this way. The protagonist realizes that focusing solely on academics is not enough and considers investing in stocks, but he lacks the money to do so. Then, a new idea comes to mind, and he decides to begin physical training instead. As a result, he reaches his second year of high school with a completely transformed appearance and far greater self-confidence. His entire first year flew by in the blink of an eye, and throughout that period, he trained relentlessly. The young man pushed every workout to its limit and lifted weights with near-obsessive dedication. He exercised every single day without exception, reshaping his body into something far stronger and more defined. All of that hard work and sacrifice served one single purpose: self-protection. After all, this is a manga world, and there is no telling when ghosts, aliens, or some other absurd scenario might suddenly appear. Better safe than sorry before the surprise arc drops. That is why he prepared himself for an uncertain future, rather than out of vanity or a desire to show off his strength. The young man successfully made it through his entire first year without any major issues, and hopes things remain that way. Unfortunately, everything he has just been thinking about is about to fall apart. A girl greets him with a cheerful good morning, and she turns out to be Yaguchi Maya, the main heroine of the original story. The blonde boy replies that there is nothing good about this morning for him, and that boy is none other than Sakamoto Ryuji, the original protagonist. The situation is disastrous because our hero ended up in the exact same class as Sakamoto Ryuji. He is furious since he specifically chose a distant school solely to avoid running into him. As if that were not enough, an unpleasant feeling washes over him when he hears Sakamoto Ryuji mention that he lost his wallet. Ryuji also reveals that he accidentally bumped into a girl earlier, causing our protagonist to become anxious as every romance manga cliché starts flashing through his mind. The flags are raising themselves at this point. At that moment, the teacher enters the classroom and instructs everyone to quiet down and return to their seats. He explains that he understands how chaotic the first day can be but asks everyone to settle down. Then, he picks up his clipboard and announces that he has something important to tell the class. Everyone grows curious and waits attentively for what he is about to say. He then reveals that they have a new transfer student and invites her to come inside. Immediately afterward, a beautiful blonde girl slowly walks into the classroom. The new student steps forward with a radiant smile and boundless energy. The other students are captivated by her beauty, and the teacher quickly calls them out for their reactions. The teacher asks everyone to treat the newcomer kindly and invites her to introduce herself. The girl introduces herself as Kishimoto Rika and mentions that she loves adorable cats and taking long naps. From his seat, the protagonist watches the scene unfold and thinks it was obvious that he would end up in the hero's class. He had already suspected that another heroine from the story would appear as a transfer student. Although he never completed the manga, he knows that Kishimoto Rika ranked first in the popularity polls. And that happened despite the fact that she was not the one who ended up with the protagonist in the story's conclusion. Fandom wars never show mercy. The teacher then points toward an empty desk and tells the new student where she should sit. Naturally, the assigned seat is right beside Sakamoto Ryuji, who does not even appear to be paying attention to the lesson. Suddenly, the blonde young man looks at the girl and recognizes her as the person he ran into earlier that morning. She recognizes him immediately as well and points at him in complete shock. Remembering the earlier incident, the young woman calls him a pervert in front of the entire class. The teacher finds the situation amusing and comments that it is probably a good thing they already know each other. The girl walks toward her desk looking visibly irritated while muttering about her classmate's shameless behavior. She then sits beside him with a look of complete rejection, leaving the young man utterly confused. The young woman turns her face away and lets out a huff, making her displeasure perfectly clear. Sakamoto Ryuji is completely bewildered by the transfer student's attitude, but at that moment, she tosses a wallet onto his desk and asks if it belongs to him. Watching the entire exchange, our protagonist realizes that he will have to endure 2 full years of situations like this. Time continues moving forward, and the classes proceed while an awkward atmosphere lingers between the two classmates. A classmate approaches him to borrow the manga magazine he had been reading. He hands it over while thinking that he wants absolutely no unexpected twists, since everything he does is for the sake of his future. He believes that even without finishing the series, he can still predict what comes next, although he also understands that manga rarely follows the most logical path. Because of that, he needs to remain vigilant at all times. That is exactly why he constantly reads the newest magazines to stay updated on current trends and common cliches. Suddenly, Sakamoto Ryuji asks Kishimoto Rika if they can speak in private, causing the atmosphere to grow tense. He explains that he needs to discuss what happened earlier that morning with her. The girl is caught off guard by the request, but eventually agrees to talk with him for a few minutes. Watching from a distance, our protagonist wonders what exactly is happening between the two of them. To avoid attracting suspicion, he announces that he is heading to the restroom, although his true intention is to follow them. With his excuse ready, he steps into the hallway and discreetly tails the main couple. Then, the young man opens the door with a serious expression, determined to uncover the entire truth. His intimidating presence is so overwhelming that he seems to be surrounded by a dark purple aura. Because of this, the other students become frightened upon seeing him and start trembling in fear. Rumors even begin spreading that he is a dangerous delinquent or perhaps a member of some shady organization. The young man thinks that trouble always manages to find him, although his intimidating appearance also makes it easier for him to go unnoticed. Without wasting any time, he hurries to spy on the situation since he has studied countless romantic comedy tropes. However, to verify whether his theories are correct, he needs to observe everything up close and gather information. In his mind, there is only one place within a school where a boy and a girl would go to have a private conversation, and he is absolutely convinced that he knows exactly where that place is. Just as he expected, the pair head toward the back of the school to talk in private. There, Sakamoto Ryuji begins apologizing desperately, insisting that he never had any bad intentions. Hidden among the bushes, our protagonist realizes that this is the classic romantic apology scene. He cannot believe that Sakamoto Ryuji adopted such an embarrassing posture, although he also admits that this is exactly what a protagonist would do. The blonde girl simply watches him with crossed arms and an obviously annoyed expression, yet she struggles to hold back a smile. Soon after, the young woman can no longer contain herself and bursts into laughter, finding the entire situation too amusing. With a playful grin, she comments that he is much more innocent than she initially thought. She then explains that she was never truly angry because she knew perfectly well that everything had been an accident. The real reason behind her behavior was that Ryuji's panicked expression had been hilarious to her. And just like that, the young man realizes that he fell victim to a prank orchestrated by Kishimoto Rika, the school's most popular girl. Our hero then concludes that this was the very first encounter event between the heroine and the protagonist. After carefully analyzing the situation, he determines that this is the textbook beginning of a romantic comedy. But suddenly, a female voice calls out his name, causing him to turn around to see who it is. A girl carrying a folding fan asks what someone destined to become the future student council secretary is doing there. She immediately accuses him of doing something shameful, such as spying on girls. This young woman is Sanji Kumiko, the student council president and a girl with the classic personality of an arrogant rival. However, he remembers that she is actually a rather tragic character, who ended up serving merely as a competitor within the story. Even so, he cannot allow any of the heroines to get too close to the protagonist. To escape the situation, he quickly picks up a small branch lying on the ground. He then claims that he was examining the branch because he thought it would look nice decorating the student council room. Kumiko stares at him suspiciously and seriously questions such a bizarre explanation. She continues observing him with obvious distrust, clearly unconvinced by such a flimsy excuse. But to everyone's surprise, the young woman gently takes the branch from his hands in a completely unexpected manner. Our protagonist is left somewhat bewildered by her reaction and cannot understand what is happening. She tells him that since he was the one who found it, she will at least place it in the meeting room. The young man thanks her while remaining amazed that such a ridiculous excuse actually worked. Task failed successfully. Afterward, the young woman asks what brought him there, especially since the beginning of the semester is usually so hectic. She also reveals that she plans to have lunch with the student council members, and has granted him a special opportunity to join them. Because of that, she tells him to hurry to the cafeteria before all the seats are taken. Confused, the protagonist replies that there is nothing there that matches her tastes. With a calm smile, she tells him that he does not know her at all. She then asks whether he is implying that she does not understand the preferences and habits of ordinary people. Kumiko recalls a pork rice bowl she once ate and confidently states that she would have no problem eating something like that. He gets the feeling that the girl is subtly flaunting her wealth while trying to appear relatable. He then explains that the school cafeteria does not even serve that kind of dish. She asks what meals are available there, and he answers that they offer something similar called gyudon. The young woman shows an uncomfortable expression and thinks that the name sounds rather strange. With obvious reluctance, she asks whether she will really have to eat something like that, appearing far from convinced. Our hero seizes the opportunity to tease her slightly by reminding her that she had just been boasting about being different from everyone else. At that moment, Akai Shinjiro, the student council vice president, finally arrives after locating her. The bespectacled young man immediately recognizes Kim and seems to understand the situation perfectly. Without hesitation, the vice president begins scolding our protagonist for skipping student council activities. Akai further reveals that the poor student council president even skipped her own meal to come looking for him. The young man becomes confused and cannot understand why anyone would do something so excessive for his sake. With her face turning bright red, the young woman immediately denies everything and insists that she was never worried about him. The vice president then steps in front of her and declares that he will no longer tolerate such disrespect. He even makes something resembling a loyalty oath while the young woman rushes him along because her food is getting cold. Akai eventually escorts the girl away while warning that if he continues behaving this way, the Akai family will not stand by idly. Our protagonist is left behind in complete confusion, unable to understand anything that just happened. After all of that chaos finally settles down, time continues to pass until the school day eventually comes to an end. Once classes are over, the young man heads toward the subway station to make his way back home. As he walks, he reflects on how the day of the protagonist's main event marks the true beginning of the story. Thanks to the intense training he underwent over the past year, everyone prefers to keep their distance from him, and his plan of living as a mere side character seems to be working perfectly. For now, NPC mode remains a complete success. If things continue this way, he will have no reason to interact with the protagonist. Just then, the station display indicates that the next train will arrive in 10 minutes. While waiting, he approaches a vending machine. Although the can drops as it is dispensed. Holding the drink in his hand, he thinks that as long as he continues living like a background character, everything should be fine. However, just as he starts believing everything is going smoothly, someone grabs his arm. Startled, the young man turns around to see who interrupted him. To his immense surprise, the person standing before him is none other than the transfer student, Kishimoto Rika. The protagonist is completely bewildered and wonders why she is standing right in front of him. The girl mentions that she was worried and is relieved that she managed to find him so quickly. She then steps a little closer and asks him how to get to a certain location. Although he knows exactly where that place is, what truly puzzles him is how she knows his name. With a cheerful smile, the young woman points to the name tag on his uniform. Kishimoto Rika calls him Kim and reminds him that his name is clearly written there. The young man feels slightly embarrassed after realizing he completely overlooked such an obvious detail. The girl lets out a small laugh upon seeing his reaction and how absent-minded he can be. She then tells him that he seems like a good person and that she thought so from the very beginning. The protagonist becomes curious about that remark and wonders what made her think that. Confused, he cannot understand what the young woman is talking about or what she hopes to gain by approaching him. That is why he asks what exactly she meant and how she managed to remember him so easily. The girl replies that he has a very distinctive presence and that it would be impossible not to notice him. She also heard rumors about how he stood up against a gang and was even recruited to play baseball. And since he acted completely naturally around the queen of the class, she assumed he must be an amazing person. The boy realizes that she managed to develop a completely inaccurate impression of him in record time. The panic sets in when he understands that he has ended up getting involved with one of the heroines. The young man reflects that her kindness probably explains why she is so popular, and he wonders whether he should try to push her away. At that moment, the girl calls out to him again, pulling him away from his thoughts about the future. The young woman complains that he completely ignored her compliment, causing him to awkwardly apologize. She then asks what he thinks about it, and the boy simply thanks her for her kind words. Upon hearing that response, the young woman gives him a warm smile and continues chatting with him. He comments that most people tend to misunderstand him, but someday she will discover what he is really like. The young man adds that he may look intimidating, but he is actually a pretty nice person. With a bright smile, she suggests becoming his friend until everyone else learns to understand him. The protagonist remains silent, trying to process such an unexpected proposal. He then realizes that trying to scare her away will accomplish nothing, and decides to go along with it for now. However, in order to preserve his side character image, he accepts the offer and tells her that he is counting on her. The young woman smiles happily because everything worked out well, while he thinks that she can keep fooling herself if she wants. Then he remembers what she originally wanted to ask and notices her showing him a piece of paper with an address written on it. The girl explains that it is the location of her new home, but admits that she is completely lost when it comes to navigating the subway lines. After looking at the address, he notices that it belongs to an extremely upscale residential area, confirming that she also fits the classic wealthy girl stereotype. The young man tells her that he lives relatively nearby, meaning they will be taking the same train, and she becomes excited immediately. Her eyes sparkle at the news, and she grows genuinely thrilled by such a coincidence. The young woman asks whether his house is very close, and he replies that it is only 2 stations away. While she believes this must be fate at work, our protagonist considers it an enormous problem. The universe really loves testing this man's NPC strategy. But suddenly, he pauses as an idea comes to mind that could allow him to take advantage of the situation. The young man spent years preparing himself to survive in this world, but he possesses one fatal weakness. He never actually finished reading the original story. Because of that, he understands that information obtained directly from Kishimoto Rika will be far more valuable than anything gathered from a side character. As a result, he decides to become friends with her in order to collect information and perhaps subtly influence certain events. With a somewhat suspicious smile, he thinks that a small adjustment like this should not affect the storyline too much. Famous last words. As a friendly gesture, he offers to buy her a drink from the vending machine. The young man explains that it is his way of thanking her for becoming his friend, and the girl chooses a cola. The moment she receives the can, she opens it immediately and starts drinking enthusiastically. With a grin stretching from ear to ear, she declares that nothing beats a good soda. He asks whether she really likes cola that much, and she replies that she has not had one in a very long time because of a strict diet. The protagonist grows curious and asks about the diet she just mentioned. The young woman then shows him a photograph on her phone in which she is wearing model clothing. She reveals that she worked as a magazine model, which is why she has to be so careful about maintaining her figure. The boy comments that she looks quite different in the picture, but she quickly denies that makeup is the reason. Before the conversation can continue, he changes the subject and points out that the train has just arrived, prompting her to protest that he is playing unfair. As the train pulls into the station, their little argument is interrupted. Once they step inside the train car, several people begin commenting on the protagonist's intimidating appearance. All of the passengers seem frightened by him and move away, creating a massive empty space around him. Social distancing before it was trendy. The girl jokes that thanks to him, they managed to discover a shortcut, but he completely disagrees with that statement. The young man then pulls out a subway map to determine the best route for guiding his new friend home. He starts leading her through the station, but the girl soon becomes a bit disoriented and struggles to keep up with him. Urban navigation clearly isn't one of her hidden talents. When the train finally reaches his station, the young woman asks whether he plans to leave her behind. He explains that this is where he has to get off, and that her destination is still 2 stations away. Just before the doors close, the blonde girl calls out his name once again. She waves goodbye and tells him that she will be relying on him tomorrow as well, right before the train doors shut. Standing alone on the platform, he wonders what exactly she meant by tomorrow too. The protagonist remains frozen in place, unable to understand where this entire situation is heading. The following day during lunchtime, the students happily make their way toward the cafeteria. The young man stays outside by himself and realizes that he forgot his lunch at home. Although fortunately, he finds a lunchbox filled with kimbap inside his bag. Picking up his chopsticks, he grabs one of the rolls, ready to finally enjoy his meal. But at that exact moment, someone calls out to him, and he turns around in surprise to see who it is. It turns out to be Kishimoto Rika, who finds him completely alone and seems genuinely concerned. She then asks him, with a sympathetic expression, whether he always eats lunch by himself. He explains that he does it to avoid making others uncomfortable, but she insists that he should eat with company instead. The young man replies that it is simply easier this way, and that his classmates just need some time to get used to him. The girl appears somewhat uneasy with that answer, and says she will try to be patient, although she doubts that he is truly that lonely. At that moment, a sudden idea crosses her mind, and her eyes light up. The girl stares at the lunchbox with great curiosity, intrigued by the variety of food inside. Recognizing the kimbap from Korean dramas, she excitedly asks if she can try some. The young man agrees, somewhat surprised, and wonders how she manages to switch moods so quickly. Mood swings faster than an anime opening transition. She then asks whether she is supposed to cry about it, and immediately suggests that they start having lunch together from now on. He warns her that he does not bring kimbap every day, causing the young woman to become annoyed as she explains that was not the point at all. The boy realizes that, without noticing it, he has grown quite close to her, and that he does not dislike her company whatsoever. The young woman picks up one of the rolls with her chopsticks and tastes it with great enthusiasm. She absolutely loves the flavor and asks whether his family truly owns a Korean restaurant. Sitting on a nearby bench, she thanks him for the meal and asks him to pass her gratitude along to his mother as well. Afterward, she offers him a piece of Japanese omelet in exchange for a bit more kimbap. The young man accepts the trade and immediately takes a piece of omelet from her lunchbox. Using his chopsticks, he brings the food to his mouth, ready to sample the Japanese dish. However, the moment he tastes it, his expression shifts completely from curiosity to utter shock. In his imagination, it feels as though someone dumped an entire jar of sugar onto the food, leading him to conclude that it is unbelievably sweet. The boy asks how much sugar she used, and she replies, "I only added what felt like the right amount." He tells her that consuming that much sweetness is not healthy, and promises that next time he will prepare a Korean-style omelet without sugar. The young woman asks what ingredients he uses for that, and when he answers that he simply adds salt, she is left utterly stunned. She calls him weird, while he privately thinks that her taste buds are the truly defective ones for enjoying something so sweet. The atmosphere becomes slightly awkward, and a strange silence settles between them. Suddenly, he glances toward the parking area and notices the student council president standing there alongside her vice president. The president appears especially anxious and unsettled about something happening nearby. Kishimoto Rika also notices them and looks in the same direction. In the president's mind, perhaps heaven could forgive certain acceptable relationships between students. But as the student council president, she could never allow such a thing. Our protagonist is completely bewildered and has no idea what she is talking about. The vice president then declares that a boy and a girl eating lunch alone together constitutes an inappropriate relationship. Immediately afterward, he confronts the young man and accuses him of making excuses after being caught in the act. The protagonist instantly denies the accusation and insists that he is not trying to justify anything. However, Kishimoto Rika remarks that meeting alone for lunch every day might indeed seem a little unusual. Upon hearing that, the president becomes so nervous that she starts stuttering as she asks whether Rika is trying to imply something. At that moment, Kishimoto Rika appears to remember something and points at her while calling her the gloomy president. The black-haired young woman is left utterly horrified and confused by that nickname. Rika explains that there is a rumor about her always walking around alone and that she now completely understands why. Furious, the president shouts that her uniform symbolizes the dignity of the student council. The blonde girl responds that she should simply embrace it because everyone thinks it looks like cosplay, and there is nothing wrong with that. The president is devastated after discovering that the students mock her by calling her a cosplayer. Critical hit. Emotional damage activated. Observing her reaction, Kishimoto Rika realizes that she may have taken the joke a little too far. The young woman then declares that she will let the matter slide this time, although she warns that one day she will return to settle the score. Embarrassed, she runs away from the scene while her vice president follows behind, unable to understand what just happened. The bespectacled young man shouts for her to wait, and the two quickly disappear from sight. Kishimoto Rika then asks her friend what exactly she did wrong, and he admits that he has no idea either. The bell rings, signaling the end of lunch, and everyone returns to their respective classrooms. After classes conclude, our protagonist remains alone at his desk, completely absorbed in his thoughts. Suddenly, a female voice calls out to him, prompting him to turn around to see who it is. Kishimoto Rika appears with her backpack and asks why he still has not gone home. She notices a student club guidebook resting on his desk, and he explains that he wants to join a club since he now has some free time. The girl then suggests that they visit a few clubs together that very afternoon. It seems that his plan to remain a simple side character keeps running into persistent obstacles. She explains that it is much better to experience the clubs firsthand, and the boy admits that her reasoning makes sense. He eventually agrees to her proposal and says they should get started right away, filling the young woman with excitement. The young man then reveals that he intends to visit every single club in the school, leaving Kishimoto Rika completely stunned. With a somewhat suspicious smile, he explains that he has a very specific reason for doing so. He wants to discover the limits of his physical abilities across different sports disciplines. With that objective in mind, their first destination is the soccer club. There, one of the players unleashes a powerful shot toward the goal, but the ball flies completely off target, prompting the goalkeeper to complain about his terrible aim. At that moment, two troublemakers start mocking them, saying they cannot even score a goal. The club members grow irritated and ask them to stop interfering with practice. One of the delinquents grabs the ball and confidently declares that scoring is incredibly easy. A player immediately responds to him and the thug arrogantly asks who he thinks he is talking to. Suddenly, the captain of the soccer team appears, causing both troublemakers to flinch. With a stern expression, the captain tells them to clear the field so they can continue practicing. The pair recognizes him as Ryohei, the third-year team captain, and instantly become intimidated. Without wasting any time, they hurriedly apologize and insist that they were just about to leave. One of the players thanks the captain, mentioning that those guys had been causing trouble non-stop. The team leader then asks about the first-year students, and the player replies that none of them seem particularly promising. The captain appears worried because they dream of winning the national championship, but they lack exceptional talent. He believes that one outstanding rookie could completely change the team's fate. Meanwhile, the two troublemakers walk away from the field, still annoyed by what happened. One suggests coming back later to teach them a lesson, but his companion tells him to do it alone if he is so brave. He then mocks his supposed dream of ruling the school and calls him a coward. The other responds that fights are not won through physical strength alone, but also through experience. As they continue arguing, one of them accidentally bumps into someone. Annoyed by the collision, he turns around, ready to complain. However, he freezes upon realizing that the person he bumped into is our protagonist. The young man stares at him with an intimidating gaze and asks whether he would like to repeat what he just said. The two troublemakers recognize him immediately and become paralyzed with fear. Without daring to utter a single word, they run away in complete panic. Screaming desperately, they flee for their lives. Kishimoto Rika and our protagonist remain standing there, unable to comprehend what just happened before their eyes. The other students comment that, as expected, he managed to defeat the bullies using nothing but a single glance. The girl then scolds him, telling him that he cannot keep intimidating everyone. To her, his normal expression alone is already a major problem, leaving him utterly speechless. At that moment, he realizes that becoming an ordinary side character will be far more difficult than he originally imagined. Meanwhile, one of the players organizes the training balls by himself. Suddenly, he glances to the side as if noticing someone's arrival. Just then, the protagonist and his new friend appear near the field. Upon seeing them, the player is completely taken aback. He wonders what Kim is doing there and cannot help feeling intimidated by his presence. The young man places a hand on his teammate's shoulder to reassure him. He then comments that someone like Kim would never be interested in joining the soccer club. The captain recalls the rumors he had heard about Kim, but after seeing him in person, everything suddenly makes sense. He does not look like an ordinary delinquent at all. With that physique, he already possesses the build of a national-level athlete. Thinking that, the team leader decides to recruit him at any cost. Our hero asks whether everything is all right, and the captain apologizes before explaining the admission test. The exam turns out to be remarkably simple. They place a soccer ball on the penalty spot. The challenge is to kick it toward the goal with as much power as possible. Although he only gets a single attempt, the young man thinks that if he only has one chance, he might as well use his full strength. With that decision made, he chooses to take the challenge completely seriously. He prepares to unleash the strongest kick he possibly can. He concentrates all of his energy and adjusts his posture to generate the maximum amount of force. His muscles tighten as he gets ready to unleash monstrous strength measured in hundreds of kilograms. Gym arc paying dividends. Then, he strikes the ball. An intense purple aura seems to erupt around him due to the overwhelming power he releases. His leg moves at incredible speed and connects with the ball with flawless precision. The shot is so devastating that the ball becomes nothing more than a blur impossible to follow with the naked eye. The team members stare at the scene in complete disbelief. The captain exclaims that the kick was absolutely insane and admits that he could not even see the ball at all. As he stares at the empty goal, he struggles to comprehend the unbelievable speed behind that shot. One of the players is left terrified, wondering what on earth he just witnessed. Out on the field, the soccer ball has been completely obliterated. While looking at the remains, our hero begins to wonder if he might have gone a little overboard. Just a little, maybe enough to traumatize the entire club. After giving it some thought, he decides that soccer is definitely not the right choice for him. He then turns to Kishimoto Rika and asks which clubs they should check out next. The young woman immediately becomes excited, while the captain wonders if he truly intends to visit every sports club in the school. The rumor spreads like wildfire, and before long everyone is saying that he is touring the clubs to crush each one of them. The news generates tremendous excitement, and a crowd starts gathering so they do not miss the spectacle. Among the onlookers, a mysterious girl observes the situation and remarks that he has finally begun to make his move. Later, at the basketball club, he shatters the backboard with an overwhelming slam dunk. He then visits the baseball club, where his batting power is so ridiculous that he nearly hits one of the members. At the tennis club, the force behind his swing leaves an enormous mark on the court. Afterward, Kishimoto Rika crosses several more clubs off their list of athletic activities. The girl excitedly celebrates the fact that they managed to visit so many clubs in a single day. The young man then asks how many clubs are still left to explore. With a mischievous smile, she declares that she finally understands exactly what information he wants. Immediately afterward, she puts on a pair of glasses and adopts an overly professional demeanor. She then announces that she will answer using all the knowledge she has gathered about the various clubs. The protagonist is completely bewildered by her performance and has no idea what is happening. The young woman explains that, excluding the clubs they could not visit that day, there are still 3 options remaining. The first is track and field, which helps develop concentration and physical endurance. The second is swimming, which is ideal for improving cardiovascular fitness and strengthening the entire body. The third is kendo, a discipline centered around self-control and mental resilience. With that, she concludes her analysis and states that those are the 3 remaining clubs. He thanks her for the explanation, although he comments that such an extensive report was unnecessary. The young woman then asks where he plans to go next and offers to guide him there. The young man suddenly changes the subject and asks whether she has ever acted before. The question causes her to blush instantly. He remarks that she seems remarkably good at playing different roles, and the young woman nervously attempts to explain herself. She admits that the topic is somewhat embarrassing for her, but eventually confesses that she used to do something quite similar to acting. The protagonist is completely shocked and immediately begins imagining various possibilities. He instantly gets a bad feeling about it. He even considers that this revelation might completely break the conventions of the genre. Although he decides to put the matter aside for now, he concludes that it is better to investigate everything in advance. Suddenly, the girl grabs his arm and pulls him back to reality. She hurriedly reminds him that they still have 3 clubs left to visit. Noticing how nervous she seems, he decides not to press the subject any further. The young man suggests starting with the kendo club, and she agrees to take him there. When they arrive, they discover that a massive crowd of students has gathered outside the dojo. One of the students stares at his phone with an expression of complete astonishment. The crowd erupts with excitement as they announce that Kim has finally arrived at the kendo club. Many people comment that he has already wreaked havoc across several clubs and looks even more intimidating in person. Even a reporter from the school newspaper is too frightened to approach him for an interview. At that moment, Kishimoto Rika takes on the role of an impromptu representative and tells the reporter to speak with her instead. Just then, the doors of the dojo begin to open slowly. On the other side stands a figure that immediately captures the protagonist's attention. A young woman points at him and accuses him of using the clubs merely as an excuse to cause trouble. She then aims her kendo sword toward him with a firm and defiant gaze. She is Fumika Yuka, the captain of the club, who boldly declares that his winning streak ends right there. The crowd praises her bravery for confronting him without showing even the slightest fear. The protagonist explains that he is only there because he is interested in the club, and asks her to explain the admission test. The captain seems to appreciate his attitude and comments that he speaks with the maturity of an adult. She then assumes a combat stance and raises her wooden sword. She explains that the match will be decided with a single strike. Fumika Yuka announces that she herself will serve as his opponent, and invites him into the dojo. The students become incredibly excited at the prospect of a duel between this supposed human weapon and the club captain. Many of them cheer for the upperclassman, hoping she will defeat him. To them, this is a spectacle that simply cannot be missed. Our hero cannot help but think that everyone is treating him like the final boss of the story. Man accidentally unlocks secret boss status. Suddenly, the captain lets out a powerful shout and demands absolute silence. Her voice carries such authority that every student freezes in fear. She then clarifies that the match will take place strictly between the two of them. She also warns that no one else is permitted to enter the dojo. Fumika Yuka threatens to personally deal with anyone who dares to ignore that rule. After hearing her warning, all the spectators immediately fall silent. No one seems eager to challenge her. Kishimoto Rika comments that this captain is operating on an entirely different level compared to everyone else. Our hero agrees and acknowledges that his new opponent possesses an extraordinary presence. He can feel an immense pressure radiating from her. At that moment, he realizes that her aura is no joke. The protagonist asks Kishimoto Rika to wait outside because he will be back shortly. With everything decided, he enters the dojo alone to face the challenge. The captain asks whether he is certain that he does not need protective gear. He replies that armor in his size probably does not exist, prompting her to remove her own equipment as well. The young man accepts the condition, although he warns her that he will not be responsible if she ends up getting hurt. The girl lets out a small laugh and remarks that he says some truly amusing things while adjusting her grip on the sword. She confidently assures him that he will not even manage to touch her uniform. With unwavering confidence in her eyes, she takes her stance and prepares for the match to begin. With everything set, the long-awaited duel between the two finally commences inside the dojo. The captain charges forward with incredible speed, but our hero successfully blocks the attack using his own sword. She acknowledges his skill and comments that, for an ordinary street delinquent, he fights surprisingly well. However, the young woman adds that, in the end, he is still nothing more than a regular person. He then dodges one of her attacks with such incredible speed that it is almost impossible to perceive. The girl continues her offensive and manages to shatter his wooden sword with her own. Immediately afterward, she unleashes a flashing technique that blinds him for a brief moment. Taking advantage of her opponent's impaired vision, she prepares to deliver the finishing blow and end the match. But the young man narrowly evades the attack at the very last second, leaving the captain utterly astonished. Our hero says nothing and simply watches her with a serious expression. She calls him a foolish boy and claims that he cannot even break through such a basic magical circle. The captain launches another assault while the protagonist remains calm and completely still. Suddenly, he extends his hand and catches her sword using nothing but his fingers. With an expression of absolute disbelief, the young man reveals a fraction of his true power and disarms her instantly. The young woman is left frozen in shock, unable to comprehend what has just occurred. Then our hero takes hold of the sword and delivers a precise strike to her chest. She feels an overwhelming pressure and cannot understand what truly happened during the exchange. The protagonist begins to wonder whether she had been deliberately holding back throughout the fight. The captain realizes that she underestimated him, and that if the battle continues, she will be the one in danger. With that in mind, she decides to bring the duel to an end with her next attack. Using a secret technique passed down through her clan, Archie rushes forward to unleash her strongest and most decisive move. Our hero remains motionless, awaiting the attack with an almost unsettling composure. He then catches the strike with a single hand, and a brilliant white light erupts at the moment of impact. The young man blocks the technique effortlessly, leaving the captain completely bewildered. No one had ever endured that technique before, and everyone believed overcoming it was impossible. With a smile, she declares that this is where it all ends for him and prepares to strike again. But suddenly she senses something unusual, causing her expression to change entirely. The young woman suffers a mysterious impact and cries out in both pain and surprise. Unable to determine what struck her, she wonders if it was some kind of killing intent manifested as an aura. The captain collapses to the ground in complete defeat, unable to understand what has just happened. In her hand are the shattered remains of her wooden sword, now broken clean in half. She then realizes that it was not an aura at all, but rather a physical attack backed by extraordinary force. The protagonist stands before her with his shirt torn apart and his muscles fully exposed. The following morning, the students in the classroom discuss everything that transpired the previous day. The rumor spreading throughout the school claims that the kendo club suffered a devastating defeat and that its captain ended up hospitalized. Everyone believes that he did all of this to take over the school and establish himself as its supreme ruler. Student imagination truly operates at maximum capacity. The young man thinks that yesterday's chaos only served to fuel the rumors even further. He also notices that Sakamoto Ryuji's behavior remains exactly the same, and that he acts as though nothing unusual happened. Our hero feels relieved by this, believing that everything will be fine as long as everyone continues living their own lives. Suddenly, a hand lands on the original protagonist's shoulder. A red-haired girl calls out his name, causing everyone present to turn their attention toward them. Immediately afterward, she loudly orders him to step outside the classroom without making any excuses. The students look confused and recognize her as Tojo Karen, a member of the kendo club. Sakamoto Ryuji asks why she is looking for him and what exactly she wants. The young woman accuses him of assaulting a first-year student from the kendo club and confronts him directly. He insists that this is all a huge misunderstanding, but the girl refuses to believe a single word. At that moment, another student rises from her seat and asks the red-haired girl to wait a moment. The kendo club member asks who she is, and the young woman decides to respond to the accusation herself. She explains that several members of the club forcibly dragged her into an alleyway. It was at that exact moment that Sakamoto Ryuji appeared and rescued her from those troublesome individuals. The green-haired girl asks with obvious frustration whether she still believes that everything was his fault. Upon hearing this, the other young woman realizes that Sakamoto Ryuji was not responsible for the incident. She begins reflecting on the situation and understands that the true culprits were members of her own club. But suddenly, the girl's expression changes, and she points directly at the blonde young man. With her face completely flushed, she asks him to become her boyfriend, and promises to make him the happiest man in the world. The original protagonist becomes entirely speechless and frozen by such an unexpected confession. The other young woman is equally confused and cannot understand what is happening at all. Sakamoto Ryuji remains stunned as the red-haired girl moves increasingly closer to him. Our hero watches the scene unfold and thinks that this confession attack is unbelievably devastating. Emotional critical hit. There was absolutely no defense against that. Riko observes everything with sparkling eyes and lets out a small cry of excitement. He then exclaims that Tojo Karen is incredibly cool and completely admires her bravery. The red-haired girl's confession quickly becomes the main topic of discussion, and everyone starts speculating about what will happen next. One student places his bet on Akushi, claiming that she is kind and has an impressive physique. But another classmate disagrees and says, the tough girl who turns into an obedient pet is obviously the best. Here's the adapted text following all the requested rules. Our hero watches everything unfold from a distance and thinks people are still way too excited about what happened. He reflects that if the girl managed to gather enough courage to confess, then she must have chosen the perfect timing. Suddenly, Kishimoto Rika calls out Ryuji's name, leaving the young man slightly puzzled. She then asks him directly who he believes Sakamoto Ryuji will eventually end up dating. The boy replies that he honestly has no idea, and the girl complains that his answer is way too boring. Even so, deep down he knows that in the original story, the protagonist was destined to end up with his childhood friend. Out of nowhere, Kishimoto Rika cuts him off and confidently declares that she already knows who the protagonist will date. The blonde girl reveals that, according to the manga, Sakamoto Ryuji ends up in a relationship with the red-haired Tojo. But she has one condition. She wants to be the only person allowed to give romantic advice to her new friend. He asks whether she is truly that certain, and the girl proudly claims to be an expert when it comes to love. Kishimoto Rika insists that people line up just to receive her advice, while he quietly thinks she has an incredibly inflated sense of confidence. The young woman gets annoyed and insists she knows exactly how talented she is, though the protagonist still wonders where all that self-assurance comes from. With an adorable expression, she asks him to pay more attention to her instead of focusing so much on everyone else. The following day, the sun shines brightly as another school day begins. As he arrives at the classroom, our hero pushes open the door and steps inside. With a serious look on his face, he scans the room while appearing slightly uneasy. He soon notices Tojo sitting by herself and is surprised to see her there. A classmate greets him, prompting the young man to ask why Tojo is in their classroom. His friend explains that she spent the entire weekend persistently trying to apologize to Sakamoto Ryuji. The protagonist remarks that inviting him out for lunch is practically the same as asking him on a date, and his friend agrees. Afterward, the boy asks whether he has heard the rumor claiming that she is the daughter of someone extremely important. His classmate then reveals that Tojo Karen is the daughter of the leader of the infamous Doikai group. Our hero realizes that it is essentially an underground organization, and his friend confirms that it is basically the mafia. The young man comments that it sounds completely insane, but his companion notices that he does not seem all that shocked. His friend adds that even if the rumor is true, it changes absolutely nothing for ordinary students like them. He jokingly says he should start calling him boss from now on, though our hero finds the idea rather strange. The protagonist concludes that in a manga world, having the daughter of a criminal leader around is not all that unbelievable. Suddenly, Tojo appears once again, and stubbornly insists that Sakamoto Ryuji accept her apology. At that moment, the original hero's childhood friend steps in, and tells her to stop pushing the issue. The red-haired girl becomes furious and yells that the matter has absolutely nothing to do with her. Meanwhile, other students complain about their terrible luck in romance, causing the young man to wonder whether this situation should actually be considered fortunate. Tojo's relentless pursuit continues, and she even barges into the classroom demanding an answer regarding their date. She refuses to give up and goes as far as tracking him down in the locker room just to get a response. Later, in the hallway, she corners him and firmly declares that he will be having a meal with her that weekend. After enduring her persistence for so long, Sakamoto Ryuji finally begs her to leave him alone. During lunch, Kishimoto Rika asks our hero what his plans are for Golden Week. He answers that he intends to help out at his family's restaurant, and she praises him for being such a responsible son. The young woman then unexpectedly invites him to visit her house, leaving him genuinely surprised. She explains that she knows how much he enjoys manga, and mentions that she has an enormous collection they can read together. Smiling brightly, she comments that her father's collection is large enough to fill an entire bookstore. The young man accepts the invitation, and the girl enthusiastically tells him to contact her whenever he wants. At that moment, something suddenly clicks in the protagonist's mind. Kishimoto Rika also seems to realize something, and her expression shifts as a new thought crosses her mind. He points out that despite being incredibly slim, she eats an astonishing amount of food, and the young woman casually replies that this is perfectly normal for her. She explains that gaining weight is difficult for her, which is why she eats generously at lunch to avoid snacking later. With a mischievous grin, the girl reveals that everything she eats somehow turns into curves. Critical emotional damage. The poor guy was not equipped for that information. The young man freezes completely, unable to form a single response after hearing such an unexpected comment from his friend. She calls him weird and admits that the whole thing had been a trap. The blonde girl laughs at the situation, but suddenly her expression changes completely. Her eyes widen dramatically as though she has just witnessed something unbelievable. Tojo takes a seat at their table, leaving Kishimoto Rika utterly stunned by her appearance. The blonde girl immediately senses the perfect opportunity and rises to her feet full of excitement. She approaches the red-haired girl and calls her by name. The redhead asks who she is, and the blonde introduces herself as Kishimoto Rika. She then remarks that Tojo appears to be dealing with a problem and offers to help solve it. The red-haired girl becomes incredibly nervous and starts stammering without knowing how to respond. Eventually, she admits that she has heard rumors about Kishimoto Rika being exceptionally skilled at giving romantic advice. Tojo asks how she figured out what her problem was, and Kishimoto Rika replies that she constantly sees her chasing after Sakamoto Ryuji. The girl instantly blushes, grabs Kishimoto Rika, and orders her to be quiet, while our hero is startled by the scene unfolding before him. The blonde comments that the timing is perfect because she had actually wanted to speak with Tojo herself. The red-haired girl blushes even harder and concludes that the other girl must also be seeking love advice. After classes end, our hero walks home while thinking that Kishimoto Rika is having way too much fun with all of this. Professional Matchmaker DLC unlocked. Later that day, the blonde girl arranges a meeting for the following day, and the redhead agrees without any hesitation. He recalls that in the original storyline, the two of them were nothing more than rivals, making their current behavior feel incredibly unusual. Even so, he decides to stop overthinking the matter, and heads to the gym for a workout session. Upon arriving, he is startled by the amount of noise, and quickly realizes that everyone is training with unbelievable intensity. Yeah, this looked less like a workout and more like preparation for the final boss battle. As he scans the room, he wonders why the atmosphere is so chaotic when someone suddenly calls out his name. The young man turns around in surprise and discovers that it is Fumika Yuka, the captain of the kendo club. With a look of astonishment, he immediately recognizes her from the duel they had in the school's dojo. The protagonist then asks if she is really the same person standing before him at the gym. The young woman explains that her club practices are no longer enough for her and that she had no idea he trained there as well. He feels somewhat uncomfortable and realizes that her presence perfectly explains why everyone seems so excited. Additionally, the young man notices that she is attractive enough to cause such a commotion. He asks whether she lives nearby, and the young woman reveals that she recently moved into the area. Our hero is surprised by the news, but at that very moment, someone enthusiastically declares that this is fantastic news. The gym owner, Nakayama Yujiro, suddenly appears and once again addresses the protagonist as boss. He then asks him to teach Fuma how to train since they both attend the same school. The owner quietly whispers that the girl seems interested in him and that he should make the most of the opportunity. The young man replies that he will take things slowly, believing that the owner has completely misunderstood the situation. The three of them stand there observing the various machines and weights scattered throughout the gym. Then, the owner suggests starting with 220 kilograms, leaving Fuma utterly shocked by the number. Trying to reassure her, he comments that in over 20 years, he has never encountered a beast like Kim. With that said, our hero firmly grips the barbell and prepares to begin his workout. The muscles in his legs tighten as he positions himself to lift the weight. The gym owner smiles proudly as he witnesses such an incredible display of strength. With a grunt of effort, the young man raises the bar with astonishing ease. The kendo captain is left completely speechless by the overwhelming power she has just witnessed. The owner insists that the weight is far too light and increases the load to 270 kilograms. The young man successfully lifts the heavier weight through 5 complete sets, leaving both spectators completely stunned. The owner proudly boasts that he is truly a beast, while the young woman concludes that the entire situation is absurd. She admits that a physique like his should not belong to an ordinary student, and decides that he is a genuine monster. As a result, she reaches the conclusion that he must possess the legendary Supreme Yang physique she has heard about. This physique supposedly embodies the Yang energy of 100 men combined into a single body. According to ancient theories, numerous historical heroes and legendary figures were also said to possess this power. She is entirely convinced because she fought him personally and experienced that overwhelming strength firsthand during their battle in the dojo. After reaching this conclusion, she decides to immediately report her discovery to a certain individual. The following day, the group gathers outside a traditional-style residence. Once they enter the property, they receive a warm welcome, while the red-haired girl appears completely familiar with the surroundings. The young man wonders if Tojo's family truly belongs to the mafia, and whether situations like this are considered normal there. He thinks he will never grow accustomed to the strange nature of this world when a man suddenly fixes an intense stare on him. The young man is startled by the intimidating presence of the enormous individual. Immediately afterward, the man accuses him of being a spy sent by a rival organization and orders the young woman to step aside. The red-haired girl immediately scolds him and explains that her friends came to help her. Our hero feels frustrated and thinks he has done absolutely nothing to deserve such treatment. Once inside the house, the man apologizes for the behavior of his subordinates. The young man responds that it is not a problem and comments that misunderstandings like these happen to him quite often. He attempts to quietly excuse himself from the gathering, but Kishimoto Rika insists that a boy's perspective is important as well. She then explains to Tojo that one of the best ways to express feelings is through cooking. The blonde confidently proclaims herself a love expert, while our hero experiences overwhelming secondhand embarrassment. Emotional damage level, critical. With excitement, she asks whether everyone is ready to start cooking, and the group agrees. Time passes quickly as they enjoy the entertaining cooking session together. With her face completely flushed, the red-haired girl finally announces that she has finished preparing her dish. Proudly, she presents the first lunchbox she has ever made, and Kishimoto Reka praises her hard work. In a brief flashback to the cooking lesson, our hero had warned her to be careful with the fire, but the food still ended up burnt, making him think that lunchbox resembled a weapon of mass destruction. Feeling hungry, he offers to cook something himself, surprising both girls. With complete confidence, the protagonist tells them to leave everything to him. He then begins cooking, and a massive burst of flames erupts from the pan, showcasing his impressive skills. The two girls watch with wide eyes as they witness their friend's culinary talent. Within just a few minutes, he finishes the dish and announces that the meal is ready. The young women taste the food and are amazed by how delicious it is. Kishimoto Rika asks when he learned to cook so well, and the young man explains that he started during his first year. He shares that his mother used to wake up before dawn every day to prepare meals, but he felt guilty watching her do so. Because of that, he decided to teach himself how to cook, and Kishimoto Rika is deeply moved after hearing the story. He then asks who prepares her lunches, and the young woman replies that her mother does, giving him the perfect opportunity to tease her a little. Suddenly, the blonde remembers that she has something she wants to give Tojo, leaving the other girl confused. She then hands her a gift and explains that she bought makeup especially for her new friend. In addition, Kishimoto Rika prepared a complete skincare routine guide, and Tojo awkwardly thanks her for the thoughtful gesture. The young woman remarks that they should start by practicing makeup before heading out to buy some new clothes. Kishimoto Rika then points out that Karen's usual fashion sense at school is a little unusual. She even adds that Karen dresses like an old man, instantly causing the redhead to explode in protest. Our hero cannot help but smile as Karen firmly declares that she will master makeup for her upcoming date. Brimming with excitement, the blonde asks him to wait a moment while they freshen up a bit. He asks if she truly intends to leave him by himself, and she replies that witnessing a girl's transformation should practically be considered a crime. With that, the two girls head off to begin their makeup session, leaving our protagonist entirely on his own. The young man stands there in confusion since she had been the one insisting that a guy's opinion was important. Later that evening, he walks home while reflecting that the day had turned out to be far more enjoyable than expected. Alongside Kishimoto Rika, he genuinely hopes that Karen succeeds in getting the date she has been dreaming of. Suddenly, he stops and glances to the side, confusing the blonde girl. The young man explains that he needs to stop by a store to buy a manga magazine. He picks up a copy of the weekly issue, its cover decorated with vibrant and eye-catching colors. The girl asks if he buys that magazine every week and mentions that her father is also a huge manga fan. He asks whether she reads it as well, and she responds with an oddly nervous question about whether that makes her a good person. With flushed cheeks, she begins acting uneasy, and the young man reassures her that she is indeed a good person. He explains that she worked incredibly hard to help Karen, and that anyone capable of doing that deserves recognition. Hearing his praise, the girl becomes thoroughly embarrassed and turns away, her face turning bright red. The protagonist cannot understand why she reacted that way, while she seems to grow increasingly flustered. The girl comments that it is getting late, and hurriedly leaves the store to head home. Left standing alone, the young man wonders what happened, and eventually concludes that she probably had an urgent need to use the restroom. A highly questionable theory, but it is the best explanation he can come up with. The following morning, beneath clear skies, another school day begins. In the hallways, students whisper among themselves as they stare in amazement at someone who has just appeared. Sporting a completely refreshed appearance, Karen walks through the corridor while everyone comments on how adorable she looks. The students wonder if someone that cute had always attended the school and begin investigating which class she belongs to. Wearing a determined expression, she carries a letter decorated with an elegant seal. Soon after, she presents the letter to Sakamoto Ryuji and formally challenges him to go on a date with her. Unable to recognize her, the young man asks who she is, causing Karen to become furious immediately. Time passes, and eventually the group gathers in Shibuya for their long-awaited shopping trip. Kishimoto Rika praises Karen's challenge letter, while Karen asks everyone to start calling her by her first name. The blonde happily agrees and asks her new friend to simply call her Kishimoto Rika as well. As they browse through the women's clothing section, our hero feels as though he has stepped into an entirely different dimension. In a brief flashback, Kishimoto Rika had convinced him to join them so he could help choose outfits for Karen. The blonde spots a boutique called Marionette and immediately falls in love with an elegant dress. Without wasting a second, she drags Karen inside so she can try it on. Kishimoto Rika starts piling all sorts of outfits onto her friend, leaving Karen completely overwhelmed. Wearing a triumphant grin, she pushes Karen toward the fitting room so she can change as quickly as possible. The redhead insists that this style does not suit her at all, but Kishimoto Rika decides to take matters into her own hands. She approaches Karen and tells her to stop complaining and trust her judgment. Meanwhile, outside the fitting room, the young man wonders what exactly is happening in there. With trembling hands, Karen holds onto the skirt of her elegant new black dress. At last, she steps out of the fitting room and comments that the skirt is far too short, but Kishimoto Rika completely ignores the complaint. Our hero looks at her and tells her that the new outfit genuinely suits her very well. The young woman blushes instantly, while he thinks that Karen has undergone an incredible transformation. Character customization complete. New skin unlocked. After finishing their shopping, the group returns to the Tojo clan residence, Karen's home. Meanwhile, an important meeting is taking place inside the mansion. The clan leader surveys his subordinates with a stern expression. This man is Tojo Natsutada, the sixth head of the clan and Karen's excessively protective father. He is better known by the fearsome nickname Red Sea, a title capable of intimidating anyone. Suddenly, he drives a knife into the table and announces that his daughter has found a suitor. The people present react with outrage and demand to know which delinquent dared approach her. Karen's father declares that he will never hand his daughter over to some random stranger and summons his assistant. He then asks for the young man's name, and his right-hand man confirms that it is Sakamoto Ryuji. The assistant reports that this is the same Sakamoto Ryuji, who attends the same private school as Karen. Furthermore, he explains that Karen wanted to visit a beauty salon, and that he personally escorted her there. As if that were not enough, he presents her credit card history, which is filled with purchases from clothing stores. After reviewing all the evidence, he concludes that Karen definitely has a date scheduled. Upon hearing this, the father erupts with rage. The clan leader bellows Sakamoto Ryuji's name while his subordinates desperately try to calm him down. With hatred visible in his eyes, he orders every available clan member to assemble over the weekend. Their mission will be to discreetly watch over Karen and prevent Sakamoto Ryuji from attempting anything suspicious. Everyone in the clan's upper ranks agrees to participate in the operation to protect the young woman. Meanwhile, the group relaxes at a cafe after their exhausting shopping adventure. Kishimoto Rika complains that she is completely drained from all the walking they did. She claims that she does not even have enough energy left to chew, although our hero notices that she continues eating without any issues. Karen sincerely thanks them for all the help they have given her, and Kishimoto Rika replies that it was nothing because they are great friends. The redhead remarks that thanks to her, the shopping trip turned out to be genuinely enjoyable. After saying that, she begins looking at the protagonist from a completely different perspective. The young woman asks whether the hamburger is enough and offers to buy him something else as well. She insists because she believes all the help she received was worth far more than just that meal. Deep down, she recalls that she initially thought he looked like a delinquent, but now she sees him in an entirely different light. The young man asks why she is staring at him so intently, and Kishimoto Rika jokingly says that he has ketchup on his face. The redhead completely falls for the prank, and the blonde asks whether she has already decided where to go for the date. Karen replies that she plans to visit a cafe and then watch a movie, but her friend claims to have a much better idea. Kishimoto Rika suddenly exclaims that Karen is being far too naive, startling her with the abrupt outburst. The blonde explains that she will never win a guy's heart by doing exactly what everyone else does. With a mischievous grin, she shows them a photo of an aquarium on her phone. Kishimoto Rika begins describing massive shimmering waves and fish swimming among colorful coral reefs. She adds that the perfect lighting and romantic atmosphere make it the ideal setting for a meaningful conversation. The blonde insists that Karen should trust her completely, and our hero simply cannot believe what he is hearing. With all the preparations complete, the day finally comes to an end as the sun disappears beyond the horizon. Kishimoto Rika says goodbye to Karen and wishes her the best of luck on tomorrow's date. The redhead sincerely thanks them and waves farewell to the two friends who helped her so much. After Karen leaves, our hero and Kishimoto Rika continue walking together. The young woman asks what his plans are for tomorrow, and he replies that he intends to stay home reading manga. Upon hearing that, she suddenly comes up with an idea, following Karen during her date. The suggestion leaves the young man utterly stunned. Kishimoto Rika insists that they have a responsibility to make sure their friend is happy, eventually persuading him to agree. The girl excitedly celebrates their newly formed partnership, and thus the rather unusual espionage team of Kishimoto Rika and our hero is born. The next morning, the sun rises once again, marking the arrival of the long-awaited date day. In one corner of the city, two girls stare ahead with expressions of surprise. One of them is Sakamoto Ryuji's childhood friend, who appears especially shocked by something. Not far away, Karen's father also appears, his intimidating aura frightening even a nearby child. While his subordinates prepare to monitor his beloved daughter's first date, Karen nervously waits while clutching a gift wrapped in purple paper. Soon afterward, Sakamoto Ryuji arrives, greeting her with a wave and calling her by her family name, Tojo. With a gentle smile, he apologizes for being late and asks whether she has been waiting long. Blushing, the young woman answers that she has only just arrived and that it is not a problem at all. An awkward silence settles between them, and Sakamoto Ryuji struggles to keep the conversation going. The young man then compliments her casual outfit, catching her completely off guard. After shyly thanking him, the two begin walking together on their long-awaited date. She suggests getting something to drink while planning out the rest of their day, and he readily agrees. The young man offers to carry her gift while someone watches them from a distance. Hidden inside a well-concealed alleyway, our hero and Kishimoto Rika discreetly spy on the couple. The protagonist quickens his pace to keep up with them, while Kishimoto Rika rushes after him to avoid being left behind. Meanwhile, the couple heads toward a popular cafe, looking genuinely excited. From afar, Karen's father observes the entire scene with an expression filled with hatred and disapproval. Suddenly, he explodes with anger upon realizing that the boy made his daughter wait for a full 5 minutes. To him, that was already an unforgivable offense. One of his subordinates warns him that civilians are beginning to stare at them suspiciously, leaving the clan leader surprised. The assistant explains that 9 people tailing a couple attracts far too much attention and suggests splitting into pairs. The boss accepts the proposal and orders everyone to operate in teams of 2 from that point onward. Meanwhile, inside the cafe, the atmosphere between the 2 young people feels calm and surprisingly romantic. For dessert, they are served an enormous and delicious strawberry parfait. Kishimoto Rika becomes incredibly excited at the sight of it, while our hero seriously doubts she can finish it. The young woman teases him by asking if he would not even be capable of finishing a single parfait. However, our hero senses that something is off and starts carefully observing the other customers. He points out that the place is packed with middle-aged men who look highly suspicious. He soon begins suspecting that every one of them is somehow connected to the Tojo family. His attention eventually settles on one specific individual, Karen's overprotective father. He thinks the wig the man is wearing looks ridiculous, although he also notices the strong resemblance to Karen. Right then, he overhears Karen and Sakamoto Ryuji talking about the dolphins at the city's aquarium. The couple agrees that the dolphins will be the very first thing they visit upon arriving there. With a radiant smile, the young woman remarks, "Today is going to be amazing." Our hero grows tense, thinking that with so many spies following them, this date will not have an easy time succeeding. After finishing dessert, the pair head to Shibuya Station to catch the next train. Inside the overcrowded train car, Karen eventually falls asleep on Sakamoto Ryuji's shoulder due to exhaustion. Meanwhile, our hero shields Kishimoto Rika from the pushing crowd as the train doors begin to close. The young woman is startled by the pressure of the packed passengers, while others complain about the lack of space. She thinks she is far too close to Ryu and never expected the train to be this crowded. Personal space has officially left the chat. The young man immediately notices how uncomfortable she feels. He tells her to endure it just a little longer, and she shyly agrees. When the doors finally open, the surge of passengers nearly sweeps Kishimoto Rika away amid the chaos. Worried about losing sight of the couple, he asks her to hold his hand so they do not get separated. Holding her hand firmly, he guides her through the crowd until they manage to get off the train without any trouble. After surviving all that chaos, they finally arrive at Ikebukuro Station. Both of them are exhausted, but at least they made it out in one piece. Only then do they realize that they are still holding hands. Kishimoto Rika points out their intertwined fingers, and the young man awkwardly apologizes. As he prepares to let go of her hand, ready to step away, the girl makes a completely unexpected request. With a gentle smile, she tells him that next time she would like him to hold her hand a little more carefully. Our hero immediately becomes flustered and starts wondering what exactly she meant by that comment. Suddenly, the traffic light turns red, causing them to lose sight of the couple across the street. He tries to reassure her, reminding her that since the aquarium is their final destination, they can simply head there directly. Once they arrive, they are greeted by an enormous crowd, prompting the subordinates to complain. No one had anticipated such a massive turnout on a weekend morning, leaving them completely overwhelmed. The young man notices the clan members and realizes he must avoid being recognized at all costs. Because of that, he hides together with Kishimoto Rika to avoid attracting the organization's attention. From a distance, Karen's father spots him and becomes suspicious of the hooded figure. The assistant recognizes Kim and also identifies the girl accompanying him. In a brief recollection, he remembers how both of them helped Karen prepare for her date. Armed with that information, the clan leader concludes that they are there to support his daughter rather than ruin the occasion. He then decides to follow Karen's friends instead of interfering with the date himself. Without delay, he gathers his men and begins tailing our hero and Rika closely. Meanwhile, inside the aquarium, the couple is captivated by the beauty surrounding them. Sakamoto Ryuji invites her further inside, and Karen becomes thrilled while admiring the fish. Nearby, 2 troublesome students recognize the original protagonist. One of them smirks unpleasantly and asks his companion who that guy wandering around is. He quickly remembers that it is the same person who got them expelled from the kendo club, and anger immediately fills his face. Filled with resentment, he declares that this time he has no intention of letting him get away. Inside the aquarium, our hero and Kishimoto Rika continue discreetly observing the couple from afar. The dim lighting makes it difficult to see them clearly, but the chemistry between them appears undeniable. The young man realizes that the date is going much better than he had expected. Karen wears a radiant smile and seems to cherish every moment spent with Sakamoto Ryuji. He then starts questioning whether it is really necessary to keep spying on them. After exploring the aquarium, the couple heads to Minami Ikebukuro Park for a picnic. Kishimoto Rika has prepared a genuine feast filled with delicious-looking kimbap and inari sushi. Our hero is surprised by the enormous amount of food, while the young woman appears more excited than ever. She then comments that they can now enjoy their meal while continuing to monitor the couple. Sakamoto Ryuji remarks that the aquarium visit was incredibly enjoyable, and Karen happily agrees as she recalls the fish they saw. With obvious nervousness written across her face, the redhead offers him the lunch she personally prepared. Kishimoto Rika worries about her friend, but our hero explains that she is simply anxious because it is her first time doing something like this. The blonde recalls that Karen spent 3 entire days practicing and even sought advice to get everything right. With trembling hands, the young woman presents the lunchbox to the boy, who examines it carefully. He is genuinely impressed by how the food looks and comments that it appears amazing. The blonde young man picks up one of the onigiri to taste it. Keeping her eyes fixed on him, the redhead nervously waits for his reaction. After taking a bite, his expression changes completely because of the flavor. With his mouth still full, he gives a thumbs up to show his approval. Seeing that response, the young woman's face lights up with happiness, and her eyes begin to sparkle. Filled with excitement, she offers him a piece of chicken, causing the young man to blush slightly. He then opens his mouth to accept the food offered by the enthusiastic girl. With a hopeful smile, she watches the interaction as the atmosphere becomes increasingly romantic. Encouraged by the moment, the young woman urges him to continue trying the rest of the dishes. Sakamoto Ryuji praises every item she prepared, and Karen is overjoyed that he enjoys everything. Watching from afar, our hero tells Kishimoto Rika that she should start eating as well, and she agrees. Meanwhile, Sakamoto Ryuji offers Karen some of his own onigiri. He explains that he is full for now but plans to keep tasting her food later. With her face completely red, the young woman realizes that this truly feels like a real date. Kishimoto Rika comments that the two seem to get along incredibly well, and he agrees with her observation. However, the blonde feels that something is off because everything is going far too perfectly. With a dreamy expression, she mentions that she would love to experience a date like this someday. Our hero takes the opportunity to tease her a little about her self-proclaimed status as a love expert. The blonde then admits that she has never actually been on a date and that everything she knows comes from reading manga. Truly the most reliable source possible. Or maybe not. When the picnic comes to an end, the couple begins packing up their belongings to leave. Our hero says that he intends to continue watching over them a little longer, but she insists that they have already done enough for their friends. The young man completely ignores that excuse, causing the girl to become irritated. With a calm smile, he simply watches the couple, who seem to be sharing an excellent connection. From a distance, the two amateur spies begin to think that the moment for a major confession may finally be approaching. But suddenly, our hero notices something unusual and widens his eyes in surprise. Karen's gift is lying abandoned on the ground, and Sakamoto Ryuji appears to be dealing with some sort of problem. The two troublesome former members of the kendo club show up at the park and approach the couple. Wearing malicious smiles, they declare that they have finally found him and proceed to call him a delinquent. Looks like the universe really said, "No peaceful date for you today." He stared in shock as he spotted them standing there, while Karen had absolutely no idea what was going on. From a distance, our hero and Kishimoto Rika watched the situation unfold, with the same level of confusion. The troublemakers immediately started accusing him of being a womanizer who constantly jumped from one girl to another. Kishimoto Rika suggested calling the police, but he replied that he would step in himself if things escalated. The aggressors moved even closer as Sakamoto Ryuji prepared himself for a fight. At that moment, our hero remembered that these two were the first-year students who had been expelled from the kendo club. In a brief flashback, one of the original protagonist's friends explained everything that had happened. Those two had been kicked out of the club, and despite being outnumbered, Sakamoto Ryuji had managed to defeat them. Still bitter over what happened, they complained that they could no longer see the captain, immediately irritating Karen. She called them idiots and pointed out that they still failed to understand why they had been expelled in the first place. The pair instantly recognized her and began mocking her new appearance and outfit. With smug grins, one of them asked whether she was really dating a loser like him. They continued ridiculing her, claiming she was way out of his league and should just stay at home. Sakamoto Ryuji yelled at them to shut up and stepped in front of Karen to protect her, but the delinquents revealed they had not come alone and had brought backup. One of them called for his older brother, causing Sakamoto Ryuji to immediately become cautious. Soon after, a muscular blonde man arrived and introduced himself as the older brother. They identified him as Hayashi, a legendary figure from Kitayama, who according to rumors was still active. Sakamoto Ryuji urgently told Karen to run away, but she refused to leave him behind. The delinquent grew irritated by their behavior and ordered them to stop acting like heroes. With a swift motion, he grabbed Karen by the wrist and pulled her toward him. He then suggested they go have fun together, and told her to forget about that useless guy. Sakamoto Ryuji shouted at him to let her go, but the thug dismissed him as nothing more than a nuisance. With one powerful blow, he sent the boy flying and prepared to continue his assault. At that moment, our hero stood up and instructed Kishimoto Rika to remain where she was. While the delinquent continued holding Karen, she desperately called out Sakamoto Ryuji's name. The aggressor claimed everything was fine and insisted he was simply taking his girlfriend with him. He took another step forward, but a dark purple presence began emerging behind him. Then our hero appeared before him with an icy gaze filled with anger. Grabbing the man's arm with crushing force, he made him release Karen, drawing out a scream of pain. With a single motion, he hurled him away, leaving everyone stunned. Wearing a cold expression, he warned him that he would not repeat himself and ordered him to keep his hands off his friend. The aggressor stood back up in confusion and called him boss, unable to understand where he had come from. Annoyed, he demanded a fair fight and accused him of attacking without warning. Our hero unleashed an overwhelming presence, causing the delinquent to wonder what kind of training he had undergone. Even so, he convinced himself it had only been a surprise attack, and that he was merely facing a strong civilian. Meanwhile, Karen's father observed everything from afar and wondered whether he should intervene. He remembered how he had lost track of the couple and started panicking. Just moments ago, they had been having lunch in the park, and suddenly they had vanished. His assistant eventually located them and pointed toward their position in the middle of the park. The clan leader saw his daughter being grabbed and prepared to take action. Rage consumed him at the sight of someone daring to lay a hand on his beloved Karen. One of his subordinates asked if he should bring the tools, but the boss ordered him to wait. The clan head insisted they did not need to interfere in a fight between youngsters, and continued watching. Standing behind everyone, our hero released an intense dark purple aura that intimidated all the troublemakers. Karen's father felt a suffocating pressure as the atmosphere became unbelievably heavy. Suddenly, he remembered experiencing that exact sensation once before. That presence reminded him of Ivan, the feared Russian mafia leader known as the Destroyer. During a meeting held in Japan, he had felt that same overwhelming terror. To him, it was the presence of a true monster capable of striking fear into anyone. Because of that, he found it impossible to believe such an aura could come from an ordinary student. Our hero decided he would no longer follow the original storyline, and would protect his friends in his own way. After making that decision, he prepared to deal with the trash standing before him. He then instructed Tojo to take Sakamoto Ryuji away and leave the rest to him. The young woman tried to object, but he interrupted her and assured her that he would not lose to people like them. The delinquent grew furious at being ignored, and decided to fight with everything he had. Charging forward, he threw a punch, but our hero remained calm and motionless. He followed up with a barrage of strikes, yet not a single one landed. The troublemakers cheered, claiming his punches were far too fast to dodge. The attacker bragged that nobody could evade his blows, but suddenly, something fell off. None of his attacks seemed to have any effect whatsoever. Our hero stared at him with an icy expression, causing the thug to become increasingly uneasy. The aggressor rushed in once more, this time putting even more power behind his attack. He landed a direct hit to his face, yet the young man did not even flinch. Kishimoto Rika cried out in alarm, while Karen desperately called his name as well. Despite the bruises covering his face, the young man continued staring at his opponent with complete contempt. A thin trail of blood ran down his face as he maintained a cold and silent expression. The attacker was horrified by the sight and could not believe what he was witnessing. Then our hero calmly declared that from this point onward, everything would count as self-defense. The delinquent looked confused, unable to understand what those words meant. With a single punch, our hero struck him in the face and sent him flying effortlessly. Bro just unlocked the find out phase after all that mess around. After all, self-defense means neutralizing a threat with a single strike when the situation demands it. The blow is so devastating that the delinquent crashes into the ground, completely unconscious and defeated. The young man remarks that anything beyond that would have counted as excessive force, while the others rush over to wake their companion. Seeing the terrible condition their friend is in, both of them are horrified by our hero's strength. He then fixes them with a chilling stare and reminds them that they dared to lay their hands on his friends. One of them attempts to intimidate him by boasting that his father holds an important position within the police force and has countless connections. The young man replies that he intends to straighten out their rotten mindsets before grabbing the aggressor by the head. He then unleashes his iron claw technique, drawing agonized screams and desperate pleas for mercy. With a single motion, he throws them aside, and both collapse onto the ground in defeat. Terrified, the two beg him to spare their lives and plead with him not to hit them again. He orders them to disappear and never come near his friends again. Without a second thought, they agree and sprint away at full speed. Karen immediately rushes over to him, and the young man assures her that everything is fine and that it is only a scratch. However, she erupts in anger and demands that he go to a pharmacy to treat his injuries. He is surprised by how upset she is, as he has never seen her react this way before. Once everything settles down, our hero and Kishimoto Rika resume observing the pair from afar. The atmosphere between them has noticeably grown heavier, and silence dominates the bench where they sit. Sensing the mood, the two spies decide to give them some privacy to talk alone. Blushing deeply, Karen apologizes because he ended up getting hurt because of her. The young man reassures her that none of it was her fault and explains that the attackers had actually come after him. With her heart pounding from nervousness, she gathers the courage to express her feelings. Wearing a gentle smile and a face completely flushed red, she prepares to reveal what is in her heart. Summoning every ounce of bravery she has, she finally confesses that she likes him. The confession leaves Sakamoto Ryuji utterly stunned. Without stopping, the young woman continues pouring out everything she has been keeping inside. From a distance, our hero and Kishimoto Rika watch the scene in total disbelief. With hopeful eyes, she asks him to go out with her. She desperately pleads for him to become her boyfriend. The young man remains silent for several moments, and his expression suddenly changes. With a serious look on his face, he stares directly at her, making the atmosphere even more tense. At last, he apologizes and admits that he cannot give her the answer she hopes for. The young woman tries to persist, but he explains that she deserves someone better than him. Confused, Karen listens as he reveals that he once promised marriage to another girl. He further explains that until he finds her again, he cannot return anyone else's feelings. For that reason, he clarifies that he has no intention of starting a relationship with anyone for the time being. Tears begin to well up in her eyes as his response shatters her heart. He confesses that he cared deeply for that girl in the past and even cried when she moved away. Karen then realizes that this girl truly was his first love. After hearing everything, she stands up and says that she will stop pursuing him. Forcing a smile onto her face, she comments that she had a wonderful time and that she will see him again at school on Monday. Sakamoto Ryuji says goodbye as he watches her walk away with a broken heart. The young woman starts running so he will not see her crying after being rejected. Our hero is left speechless by what happened and asks Kishimoto Rika to head home first. She asks if he plans to leave on his own, and he replies that they will see each other again at school. The young woman watches him walk away and begins to worry about the situation. With a saddened expression, she thinks that he seems deeply affected and may need help. The young man follows Karen and eventually finds her sitting at a bus stop near the park. She sits there alone with her head lowered, completely devastated. He quietly approaches, and she immediately notices his presence. Concerned, he asks whether she is truly alright after everything that happened. Tears begin streaming uncontrollably down her face as she breaks into sobs. He offers her a handkerchief and admits that, after something like this, she obviously cannot be okay. Trying to comfort her, he asks her to breathe slowly and not panic. Embarrassed, she confesses that she has never cried in front of someone else before, and he does his best to console her. The word friends causes the young woman to pause and reflect for a moment. She then reveals that she knew all along that the two of them had been following them throughout the entire date. The revelation completely catches the young man off guard. Feeling intensely awkward, he wonders why protagonists in romantic comedies always get caught so easily. Rom-com protagonists really have stealth stats of 0. The young woman comments that her chaperones had been worried about her, and he awkwardly attempts to justify their actions. Sadly, she apologizes for failing and for being unable to win over the boy she likes. She also admits that she probably never held a place in Sakamoto Ryuji's heart. Placing a hand over her chest, she confesses that it hurts terribly, and that she has no idea how to make the pain go away. Our hero silently watches his friend suffering, unable to find the right words. Sweating slightly and trembling a little, the young woman gathers the strength to say something important. Through her tears, she finally admits that she truly loves Sakamoto Ryuji. The situation feels strange to him because he used to see her as nothing more than a character, but now she is a real person standing right in front of him. He also begins thinking about Kishimoto Rika and how he had always maintained a certain distance from her. For a long time, he had drawn a clear boundary between himself and the characters from the manga. However, he now wonders whether someone capable of feeling such genuine and intense pain can still be considered just a character. At last, he stands up and asks Tojo to get to her feet as well. The young man explains that they should leave because if she stays there crying any longer, someone might end up calling the police for disturbing the peace. Even emotional damage has its limits before the public gets concerned. The protagonist pauses for a moment while she watches him with a puzzled expression. With tears still lingering in the corners of her eyes, she seems to understand what he is trying to tell her. The young woman gives him a playful wink and he remarks that a smile suits her much better. Then, to her surprise, the boy removes his jacket, leaving her confused by the unexpected gesture. He hands it over to her and asks where she wants to go next. With a carefree grin, he suggests heading to a karaoke place, completely catching her off guard. He explains that he plans to sing at the top of his lungs to finally drive away all the bad luck that's piled up. After saying that, he grabs her hand and starts pulling her along while she half-heartedly tries to resist. The girl quietly comments that he always makes the most unpredictable choices. Our hero realizes that both she and Kishimoto Rika are just like him, real people with genuine emotions. With a faint smile, he looks at her and understands how sincere her feelings truly are. She smiles back at him, and when she closes her eyes, she appears far calmer and happier. From a distance, one of the subordinates wipes the sweat from his forehead, relieved by how everything turned out. The others are also grateful that Karen has someone like Kim by her side. One of them remarks that in a harsh world like this, young people like him are genuinely rare. Karen's father smiles and admits that perhaps that boy is someone special. He also hopes that their paths will cross again someday. Once they arrive at the karaoke venue, Karen yells at him to sing louder and put more passion into it. She then announces that it's her turn next, making the boy a little nervous. Meanwhile, in her room, Kishimoto Rika receives a phone call and looks unbelievably excited. Her eyes practically sparkle with enthusiasm. Unable to contain herself, the young woman celebrates the news by shouting excitedly. Not long afterward, she heads to our hero's house and is stunned by the workout equipment filling his room. She asks whether all boys keep exercise gear inside their bedrooms. She walks over to one of the dumbbells and attempts to lift it off the floor. Despite trying with all her strength, she cannot move it even slightly and complains about how ridiculously heavy it is. The boy explains that it weighs quite a lot, and she is shocked to learn that it is roughly half of her own body weight. In a brief flashback, he recalls how he started walking home with her after school. One day, her stomach growls loudly, catching the boy completely by surprise. He asks if she is hungry, causing her face to turn bright red. The girl then remembers that his family owns a restaurant and becomes immediately excited. The young man agrees to take her there, thinking that treating her to a meal is no big deal. The two head to the restaurant, where she is captivated by the dishes placed before her. Without wasting a second, she eagerly begins eating while washing it down with a soft drink. She devours every bite enthusiastically while our hero quietly watches her. Still chewing, she lets out a satisfied burp and looks completely content. She then praises the food prepared by the boy's mother, who is delighted by the compliment. Thrilled by her reaction, his mother tells her to eat as much as she wants. The protagonist notices that his mother has taken quite a liking to Kishimoto Rika and that she truly appreciates good food. Suddenly, the young woman grabs his arm and insists that they head to their next destination. He nearly chokes on his drink and asks why she is in such a hurry. With a mischievous smile, she reveals that they are going straight to his room to read manga. The boy feels uneasy and realizes he was naive for assuming nothing unusual would happen. Carrying a tray of drinks, he heads upstairs to find the girl already waiting in his room. She picks up one of his manga volumes and reacts with surprise at his reading preferences. Feeling slightly embarrassed, he insists that his tastes are nothing special while she continues teasing him playfully. The boy clarifies that he was only joking and that he knows she absolutely loves that kind of manga. He then points to a series called Golden Samurai, causing the young woman to light up with excitement. He mentions that it is his favorite work, and she reveals that she adores the series as well. The boy hands her the first volume, leaving Kishimoto Rika astonished by how rare it is to find. She explains that the artwork is incredible, and that the ending left an unforgettable impression on her. The girl's eyes begin shining with excitement once again. She agrees with him and highlights the psychological depth of the characters. The boy feels delighted and comments that he has never met anyone else who appreciated the series so deeply. The young woman then reveals that her father would be thrilled to hear such praise. Smiling warmly, she explains that her father is a manga artist and also the creator of that very series. The boy freezes completely upon learning that she is the daughter of Kishimoto Masashi. He immediately starts connecting all the clues related to her surname and appearance. He recalls hearing that the author's wife was British, and suddenly everything makes sense. The memory of visiting her house flashes through his mind, and he becomes frustrated with himself for not realizing it sooner. With wide eyes, he grabs her by the shoulders and asks if she could get him an autograph. He is practically on the verge of tears, celebrating the opportunity as if he had won the ultimate fan lottery. The young woman then asks why Golden Samurai became his favorite series out of all the manga he has read. She insists on knowing the reason behind that choice, while he becomes slightly embarrassed. The boy replies that there is no specific reason, he simply grew attached to the story over time. With a smile, the young woman mentions that there is something in Volume 5 that has always fascinated her. She points out that the protagonist consistently puts his friends above everything else. With a serious expression, he remembers that scene and the words about never allowing anyone to harm his friends. The young woman recalls that although he is strong, he is also incredibly kind. Finally, with a genuine smile, she tells him that he reminds her a lot of the hero from the series he loves so much. The next day, bright sunlight shines over the school grounds. A brand new week of classes begins. Our protagonist finds himself inside the student council room for an important meeting. The student council president watches him with a serious expression and reminds him of the promise he made earlier. She then explains that she needs assistance dealing with a rather unsettling teacher. The young woman mentions that the school has an exchange program with an institution in Russia. Because of that, she wants to prepare a special gift for the new transfer student who will be arriving soon. With a warm smile, she asks if he would help her choose the perfect present. The boy agrees to lend a hand, and she suggests meeting on the first day of vacation. Excited, she warns him that if he breaks his promise, she absolutely will not forgive him. Once she secures his cooperation, the president ends the meeting and begins searching for a place to sit. He decides to ask Kishimoto Rika if they can reschedule their plans for the 30th. Returning to the classroom, he gets ready for another day of lessons. One of his classmates approaches him and asks if he has heard the latest news about the troublemakers. He explains that the two students expelled from the kendo club have requested transfers. With a grin, his friend remarks that the whole situation feels rather suspicious. After all, both of them decided to transfer at exactly the same time. Our hero smiles and replies that they probably have reasons they would rather keep to themselves. He thinks that, at the very least, they will no longer bother his friends or cause further trouble. Suddenly, the new English teacher arrives and complains that some students are still showing up late. She instructs everyone to take their seats and open their textbooks so class can begin. With a friendly smile, she asks which of the two fruits written on the board is cheaper. The boy reads through the exercise while Kishimoto Rika nudges him lightly, urging him to answer. The new teacher, Mizuki-sensei, calls on him to respond. She initially addresses student number 24, causing his classmate to tense up, but then clarifies that the student behind him is the one who should read the sentence. Our protagonist stands up to answer the question in English. He takes on the role of James, an English student interested in learning about Japanese culture. His classmates are amazed by his flawless pronunciation and begin praising him. The teacher then asks what destination he would recommend to the character. He suggests Osaka, emphasizing that it is a city filled with international visitors and numerous tourist attractions. Mizuki-sensei suddenly makes an odd expression, leaving the boy confused. Although she insists that his answer was perfect, he still cannot shake his confusion. In his mind, he becomes convinced that the teacher seemed dissatisfied with his response. The teacher continues complimenting him and mentioning how he consistently achieves outstanding results. With a thoughtful gaze, the boy tries to figure out what is truly going on with her. Mizuki-sensei begins stumbling over her words while attempting to clarify what she meant to ask. At that moment, the protagonist confirms his suspicions and realizes that he genuinely made her uncomfortable. He concludes that, for some reason, Mizuki-sensei appears to be afraid of him. Meanwhile, rumors continue circulating through the hallways that he is the heir to a family connected to some syndicate. He thinks that he has never seen anyone so intimidated merely by someone's presence. Because of that, he decides to act as normally as possible to avoid creating further misunderstandings. Meanwhile, in the teacher's lounge, Mizuki types frantically in front of a computer. Wearing a nervous smile and covered in beads of sweat, she appears deeply troubled by something. She reviews the student's records and is shocked to discover that he has an exemplary academic history. The teacher then develops a completely ridiculous theory. She believes he is pretending to be the perfect student to get close to her. With such absurd thoughts running through her mind, she ends up terrifying herself. At that moment, our hero enters the staff room and greets her with a somewhat awkward smile as he introduces himself. She jumps in surprise, invites him inside, and insists that she is not nervous. A statement that, honestly, convinces absolutely no one. In his mind, he concludes that the teacher is clearly terrified of being around him. The boy explains that he came because of the career guidance session she had previously mentioned. The teacher regains some composure and tries to conceal her anxiety behind a polite smile. She invites him to sit down and asks whether he has thought about what he wants to do in the future. Mizukui-sensei suggests that he consider taking over the family business, leaving the young man thoroughly confused. As she speaks, she continues imagining him as some kind of mafia boss. Yeah, her imagination is putting in overtime. She asks what his parents do for a living, and the boy explains that they run a restaurant. The teacher is caught off guard and repeats the information to make sure she heard correctly. He asks if there is some kind of problem. She quickly denies it and remarks that she would love to visit the restaurant someday. The protagonist thinks that the misunderstanding has finally been cleared up. The teacher asks which subjects he feels most confident in. He answers that mathematics and science are his strongest areas. Mizuki-sensei recommends that he consider pursuing a career related to STEM fields. However, the young man responds that choosing a profession solely because he excels at it would be a mistake. The teacher is surprised by that answer and begins observing him with greater interest. The protagonist then explains that he wants to dedicate himself to something he is genuinely passionate about, rather than simply choosing the easiest path. She agrees with his perspective, while he recalls the difficult experiences he endured studying engineering in his previous life. The teacher confesses that becoming an educator was not always her dream either. Curious, the boy asks what she originally wanted to become. Blushing slightly, she asks him to promise that he will not laugh. The young man agrees to listen seriously. Mizuki-sensei then reveals that her biggest dream was to become a professional voice actress. During middle school, she fell in love with a character from a mecha anime and decided to pursue that career path. However, one of her teachers told her that hobbies could always be pursued later in life. Her mentor advised her to secure a stable job first and postpone that dream until the future. She followed that advice, but she started regretting it as soon as she entered university and realized what she truly wanted. After seeing a promotional poster for an event, the young woman understood that the path she had chosen did not reflect her real aspirations. The teacher regrets building her future based solely on someone else's words. Because of that, she advises him to think carefully before making any major choices in his life. Our protagonist realizes those words are not coming from a teacher, but from someone speaking through personal experience. With a gentle smile, the instructor asks whether he truly understood the message she was trying to convey. The young man sincerely thanks her for both the advice and the valuable lesson she just shared with him. Later on, another teacher approaches him and asks if he is the famous Kim, the alleged heir of a secret organization. The instructor mentions that he has heard all sorts of stories, ranging from him being an underworld prince to a member of a dangerous gang. However, Mizuki immediately steps in to defend him and explains that all of those rumors are nothing more than a huge misunderstanding. With a calm expression, she states that Kim is actually a thoughtful and responsible student. The other teacher pauses to reflect and says that from now on he will stop judging students based solely on their appearance. Mizuki answers with a genuine smile and seems much more relieved after hearing those words. As time passes, during Golden Week, our hero finds himself standing in front of a temple in Tokyo. While holding his phone, he notices that he arrived quite a bit earlier than the scheduled meeting time. Suddenly, he spots a familiar figure and calls out to the student council president. The young woman immediately turns around and greets him with a look full of irritation, as if something had upset her. Annoyed, she shouts that he is late, leaving the poor guy completely baffled by the accusation. She grabs his arm and demands to know whether he has any idea what time it is. The president stares directly at him and points a finger his way while maintaining a visibly annoyed expression. He reminds her that there are still 10 minutes left before the agreed meeting time, but she scolds him for lacking proper manners around ladies. Leaning slightly against him, the president claims she is willing to forgive him, though only if he does her a favor in return. She then points toward a nearby shop and orders him to buy her a matcha ice cream. The protagonist cannot understand why he has to pay for it, while the girl simply responds with a mischievous grin. Having little room to argue, he ends up buying the ice cream and decides it is not worth fighting over something so trivial. The two enjoy their treats while walking together, and seeing how much she enjoys it unexpectedly makes him happy. He then asks where they plan to shop for the gift, and the question seems to irritate her slightly. The president insists she has not forgotten about it, and orders him to follow her, though he can clearly tell she absolutely forgot. A quiet voice reaches the young woman's ears and informs her that a handicraft store is located only 2 blocks away. The voice suggests taking him there so they can choose the perfect present together. Her assistants also remind her to act naturally and make better use of her feminine charm. Behind the scenes, the Sanjo family's butler and maid are carrying out a secret operation to ensure the date goes smoothly. Following their guidance, the pair eventually arrive at a store featuring an enormous golden Buddha statue. The young woman suggests the statue as a possible gift, and the shop owner immediately praises her refined artistic taste. Proud of herself, she boasts about her excellent sense of aesthetics, prompting the salesman to show her another piece that is somehow even more expensive. Our hero is stunned by the price tag, and the girl is equally shocked when she hears the amount. At that moment, the president remarks that she suddenly felt a strange chill, leaving the merchant completely confused. She then asks Minami and the others to lower their voices and stop shouting. The maid immediately scolds her, reminding her that she is on a date and should focus on the person standing right in front of her. Meanwhile, our hero casually checks his phone, while the assistants remind the girl of a crucial dating rule. The first rule of a date is making sure the other person never gets bored. The moment she hears that, panic takes over. The president suddenly seems to remember something, while the protagonist remains completely clueless about her behavior. Making up a rushed excuse, she grabs his hand and quickly drags him out of the store, leaving the owner utterly bewildered. Once outside, the protagonist asks if she is actually feeling okay. He places a hand on her forehead to check for a fever, catching the young woman slightly off guard. Flustered, she insists that she is perfectly fine and suggests heading to their next destination. At that point, her assistants provide another instruction: visit a traditional clothing store. Not long afterward, they arrive at a classic-looking shop decorated with a wooden sign at the entrance. The saleswoman shows them a kimono and confidently states that the foreign exchange student would absolutely love it. The boy asks the president what she thinks about giving it to the exchange student, but she replies that the cost is irrelevant and demands to see the finest outfit available. The shopkeeper instantly becomes excited and practically lights up after hearing that request. Without wasting a second, she presents a magnificent kimono and announces that it costs 500,000 yen. The president immediately rejects the suggestion, and the protagonist starts feeling like nothing seems to satisfy her. Time continues to pass as they remain inside the store without reaching a decision about the gift. Eventually, our hero points out that they seem stuck choosing between a yukata and a kimono, since both appear to be excellent options. The saleswoman suggests that the young woman try on the outfits to make the decision easier. She then asks the boy for his opinion, explaining that his feedback would help her choose more confidently. With the plan settled, the employee guides her toward the fitting room so she can try the different outfits. But all of a sudden, the saleswoman removes a disguise and reveals her true identity. To the girl's surprise, the supposed store employee turns out to be none other than her maid, Minami. The maid explains that she has been acting as a ninja on behalf of the family the entire time, and that the shop owner merely lent them the store. The young woman questions the purpose of such an elaborate scheme, while the ninja replies that it is all part of a strategy to make her stand out. The maid confidently declares that she will make her look absolutely breathtaking, though the girl is clearly unprepared for something this extreme. Outside, the protagonist waits patiently while passing the time with a game on his phone. Completely focused on the match, he manages to secure an impressive victory by pulling off a 9-hit combo. Bro was farming wins while everyone else was running a dating operation behind the scenes. When the match ends, he puts his phone away and continues waiting for the president. Suddenly, the door swings open and an elegant young woman adorned with a flower in her hair steps outside. The boy looks up and instantly freezes at the sight before him. Dressed in a beautiful black kimono, the president asks him what he thinks. The protagonist is completely speechless and can do nothing but stare at her with a face burning red. Embarrassed, he quickly looks away because he cannot even bring himself to maintain eye contact. The young woman watches him seriously, waiting for an honest answer. As his silence drags on, she begins to feel slightly disappointed and discouraged. At last, he gathers enough courage to say what is truly on his mind. Blushing intensely, he admits that she looks absolutely stunning, leaving the young woman completely caught off guard. He also adds that the outfit suits her perfectly and matches her style flawlessly. He continues looking at her for a few more seconds, and the atmosphere between them suddenly becomes unusually tense. After hearing the compliment, she proudly boasts that this is what happens when she actually puts in some effort. Yep, confidence mode has officially been activated. She then mentions that she also wants to try on a yukata, and asks him to wait a little longer. With that, she heads back into the fitting room to change once again. However, after receiving such a sincere compliment, the president becomes incredibly flustered, her face turning bright red. She covers her face with both hands. She is so embarrassed that she cannot even imagine looking the boy in the eyes again, while her heart races uncontrollably. The young woman wonders how she is supposed to act in a situation like this. Later, the two leave the store and immediately attract the admiring gazes of passers-by. Wearing her elegant purple outfit, the young woman walks beside our hero while drawing attention from everyone around them. The president thinks she stands out far too much, and remembers that they even rode the same train to get there. After finishing their shopping, they head off for lunch, and she mentions that she plans to call a car. The boy suggests walking instead, but the young woman argues that they already attract enough attention as it is. Suddenly, he notices something strange and asks what just happened. Her assistants were simply taking a selfie, but the protagonist thought they were secretly taking pictures of them. The two move away to avoid suspicion and continue on their way. The maid lets out a sigh of relief, but the butler panics because they almost got exposed. Nervously, he comments that they nearly got caught, while she reminds him to stop getting so close. He argues that he cannot take bad photos, and she quickly points out that he is supposed to dislike the boy. The ninja warns him not to let the young lady discover the feelings he has toward the protagonist. After walking for a while, they arrive at a restaurant decorated with lanterns at the entrance. The boy mentions that it is his favorite place to eat ramen, and the young woman listens with interest. He invites her inside and tells her she can order anything she wants from the menu. Out of nowhere, the butler is struck by a severe stomachache and urgently needs to find a restroom. The maid asks what is wrong while he complains about the painful cramps twisting his stomach. The man blames the ice cream he ate earlier, and she immediately scolds him for overeating. Without wasting another second, he rushes toward the restroom while the ninja watches in visible annoyance. Desperate to resolve his crisis, he bolts into the men's bathroom. After a short while, he sighs in relief and wonders how he ended up having such terrible luck. But the moment he steps out, he comes face to face with our protagonist and completely freezes. Afraid of being recognized, the butler quickly realizes that the protagonist remembers him as well. The restaurant door opens, and the two return accompanied by the young woman's assistants. The president is surprised to see them there and has no idea what is going on. The boy explains that he happened to run into them and decided to invite them to lunch as a thank you gesture. The young woman turns toward them with a confused and astonished expression. Deep down, she feels like the original plan for the date has completely gone off the rails. The group sits down to eat together, though the atmosphere feels a little awkward. The maid apologizes and explains that her clumsy brother accidentally bumped into the protagonist. Not long afterward, steaming bowls of ramen arrive at the table, surrounded by an irresistible cloud of aroma. The young president stares in fascination at the hot bowl placed in front of her. He asks whether this is her first time trying ramen, and she admits that she has only ever seen it on television. The boy concludes that she really did grow up as a rich girl, though the maid points out that she eats ramen at home as well. Holding chopsticks in one hand, the president lifts a spoon toward her lips and tastes the broth. The protagonist eagerly waits for her reaction and asks what she thinks of the flavor. Covering her mouth, she declares that it is delicious while her eyes sparkle with excitement. Seeing how much she enjoys it makes the protagonist happy, and even the ninja quietly celebrates the success. The butler offers to finish any leftovers, but the maid immediately reminds him about his stomach problems. After lunch, they head to an arcade packed with bright lights and all kinds of machines. The president tries repeatedly to win a plush toy from a claw machine but fails every time, becoming increasingly frustrated. Watching her struggle, the protagonist offers to win the prize for her. Meanwhile, the two boys challenge each other in a fighting game and have the time of their lives. The vice president celebrates his victory and mocks our hero for losing. Annoyed, the boy says that was taking things too far and promises to crush him in the next match. With a challenging stare, the vice president declares that he will make him pay for the affection he holds toward the young woman. Our hero becomes even more irritated, points out that they still have credits left, and immediately demands a rematch. Inside the game, the protagonist's character is suddenly struck by a powerful kick. The fire-themed girl takes advantage of the opening and lands a heavy blow, ending the battle with a devastating combo. With that knockout, the vice president's character claims victory once again. The boy cannot believe he lost, while the butler openly makes fun of his gaming skills. With rivalry burning in his eyes, the vice president prepares himself for the next and final challenge. Then he suddenly calls out the protagonist's name, leaving him slightly puzzled. The butler declares that it is time to settle everything once and for all, and points toward a nearby machine. The bespectacled young man challenges him to a contest at the arcade punching machine. Without hesitation, the butler rips off his shirt and prepares to reveal his true power. To everyone's astonishment, an incredibly muscular physique is hidden beneath his clothing. As he flexes proudly, the protagonist wonders how someone could possibly conceal that much muscle under a uniform. Both the maid and the student council president feel embarrassed by the butler's over-the-top performance. With complete confidence, he insists that the boy already accepted the challenge, although the protagonist immediately denies it. Wearing a suspicious grin, the butler flashes a badge and asks if he has been waiting for this moment. The young man grows tense while the other claims to be disappointed by such a cowardly reaction. He then begins showing off in front of the crowd, saying he never expected him to be the type to give up so easily. Smirking confidently, he tells everyone to watch closely before starting the challenge. After loosening up his muscles, he takes position in front of the machine and gets ready. Letting out a battle cry, he gathers every ounce of strength he has for the strongest punch of his life. With incredible speed, he drives a devastating fist straight into the machine. The score shoots up to 960 points, and the girls cheer for the impressive record. Afterward, he points directly at the protagonist and declares, "Now it's your turn to show what you're made of." The president enthusiastically encourages him and even promises to pay for the damages if he accidentally destroys the machine. The boy nearly bursts into tears and begs her to stop saying things like that, but she insists that she has complete faith in him. Having no real way out, he accepts the challenge while wondering how he ended up in such a ridiculous situation. He thinks the score itself is not the real problem. The actual issue is something far more concerning. Because of his enhanced physique, he worries that his strength might be way too absurd. In his imagination, he sees himself obliterating the machine with a single punch. With that terrifying possibility in mind, he decides to go all out and prepares to strike. He focuses his energy and unleashes an unbelievably powerful blow against the machine. A burst of purple light erupts from the impact, leaving everyone speechless. The butler can only stare in stunned silence after witnessing such overwhelming strength. Completely baffled, he asks where on earth the punch even landed, while the ninja remains frozen in shock. Then a zero appears on the display, and the president remarks that the machine apparently failed to register the score. The ninja immediately scolds him for his terrible aim, making the boy feel rather embarrassed. The hero thinks that at least he did not end up with some outrageous score, which works out nicely for him. But moments later, he notices something strange happening at the top of the machine. With a deafening crash, the entire upper section breaks off and slams onto the floor. The machine is completely wrecked, and silence instantly takes over the arcade. The butler stands there with his arms crossed while an awkward tension spreads throughout the building. At last, he announces that the match will be considered a draw, much to the protagonist's relief. Covering part of his face with one hand, the boy tries to hide his embarrassment and admits that the decision is fair. Even so, he warns that next time he will win by an overwhelming margin, and the hero accepts the challenge. After that chaotic disaster, the protagonist suggests taking a few photos to remember the day. Pointing toward a photo booth, he invites everyone to take some sticker pictures together. The president thinks it is an excellent idea, and the ninja immediately gets excited. The boy gathers everyone together and leads them into the booth to begin the photo session. They take several pictures while striking goofy poses and holding a bright red fan. In another photo, the ninja is playfully being choked by her brother while the couple smiles toward the camera. In yet another picture, everyone wears rabbit and mouse ears while making adorably ridiculous poses. And for the grand finale, they put on outrageous glasses and form a heart shape with their hands. Once the photos are printed, the group gathers around to admire the results. The president comments that every picture turned out great, though the butler complains because his eyes were closed. As they continue looking through the photos, they reminisce about the funniest moments of the day. The young woman smiles and admits that despite all the mishaps, it was a genuinely enjoyable day. The protagonist then suggests ending the outing with one final karaoke session. With that, the whole group heads to a karaoke venue to keep the fun going. The butler performs a song with overflowing energy while everyone else cheers and applauds him. Afterward, the president takes the microphone and begins singing a beautiful tune. With her eyes gently closed, her voice carries so much emotion that it is obvious she is enjoying every second. The protagonist and the others reward her performance with applause and approving smiles. Later, the two of them sing together, making the atmosphere even warmer and more friendly. The young woman smiles brightly as she sings beside her new special friend. The boy also joins in enthusiastically and enjoys the experience tremendously. When the day finally comes to an end, he says goodbye and tells her to get home safely. She thanks him for the outing and admits that she had an amazing time with him and everyone else. Inside the car, the two assistants sit in shock, feeling that they may have pushed their mission a little too far. The maid apologizes to the young woman for getting completely carried away during the operation. In the end, they forgot to leave at the right moment and accidentally ruined part of the date's atmosphere. The president watches them silently with a serious expression as an uncomfortable tension fills the vehicle. Then she smiles and reassures them that everything is fine because she enjoyed the entire day immensely. Hearing that, both assistants breathe a sigh of relief and look at her with admiration. She remembers the first time she waited eagerly for someone and shared an ice cream together. She also recalls all the laughter and conversations they had while visiting shops side by side. Holding the photographs in her hands, she says she treasured every moment, though one memory stood above the rest. The president especially remembers the time she spent with her two childhood friends. After reflecting on it, she sincerely thanks them for always staying by her side, causing both of them to become emotional. With her hands clasped together, she expresses her gratitude once again, leaving both of them deeply touched. Through tears, the maid says this will become one of her most precious memories. The two of them vow to remain by her side forever and get swept up in the emotions of the moment. Wearing a confident smile, the young woman declares, "Next time, you'll help me succeed." The assistants happily agree and celebrate her promise of another future date. Meanwhile, inside a dimly lit room, a man sits focused in front of a digital drawing tablet. Holding a stylus, he continues working on his manga with unwavering dedication. The long-haired man is so absorbed in his work that he fails to notice anything happening around him. Suddenly, a blonde girl appears at the doorway and cheerfully calls him Dad. She asks whether he forgot that her friend is coming over the following day. Her father replies that he is genuinely excited to finally meet the boy he has heard so much about. With a grin, he admits that he has been looking forward to meeting someone named Kim. On the second day of Golden Week, our hero arrives at Kishimoto Rika's home exactly as planned. His heart races as he prepares to finally meet the person he admires most. He bows respectfully and says it is an honor to meet him, while the author warmly welcomes him inside. The boy is so nervous that he feels as if he is standing before a living legend. In his mind, the mangaka resembles nothing less than a god of manga. The author invites him in and mentions that his wife has been eagerly anticipating the visit. Soon afterward, Kishimoto Rika's mother appears and invites him to sit before the food gets cold. A magnificent feast filled with delicious dishes has already been prepared on the table. After lunch, everyone remains seated together, chatting while expressing thanks for the meal. The author reveals that Kishimoto Rika talks about him all the time, causing the boy to blush. With a playful smile, her father remarks that he was especially curious to meet him since he is his daughter's first. The atmosphere instantly becomes awkward, and he quickly explains that they are only friends. He adds that they met because she had gotten lost, prompting Kishimoto Rika to scold him right away. The boy points out that he is her first male friend and worries about the impression he might be making on her father. He then tries to imagine the situation from the author's perspective as a protective parent. In his imagination, every boy transforms into a hungry wolf waiting for an opportunity. The young woman reprimands him for saying something so strange and ends up feeling embarrassed herself. She then asks why he keeps staring at her, making him feel completely out of place. Sensing the tension, her mother steps in to lighten the mood around the table. Kishimoto Rika's parents mention that their daughter has grown up and is gradually becoming independent. With a nostalgic smile, her father admits that he always imagined she would remain his little girl forever. He then recalls the days when she carried a cute stuffed rabbit everywhere she went. In a childhood memory, a young Kishimoto Rika proudly announces that she plans to marry her father someday. The author becomes emotional as he remembers that moment, and tears begin forming in his eyes. His wife watches with a smile while the atmosphere becomes much more relaxed. After the meal, the author invites him to see his personal studio. The protagonist immediately lights up and says he would love the opportunity. He sincerely thanks him and prepares himself for an unforgettable experience. He is thrilled beyond words at the chance to visit the studio and receive an autograph from his idol. Kishimoto Rika's mother playfully teases him, and he responds that the author is the artist he respects more than anyone else in the world. Later, Kishimoto Rika leads him to her room, leaving him impressed by its appearance. He praises the room and comments that it feels like a private manga library. The young woman steps out briefly to bring some tea and asks him to wait there by himself. With a playful smile, she warns him not to touch anything, and he agrees without complaint. Once alone, he realizes it is the first time he has ever been inside a girl's room. To pass the time while waiting, he decides to play a game on his phone. Suddenly, the door swings open, and Kishimoto Rika's mother enters with a smile. The boy jumps in surprise, and she casually asks him to call her Maria. Feeling slightly uneasy, he asks why she came, and she reveals her true purpose. With a mysterious smile, she pulls out a photo album and announces that she is about to show him her daughter's past. The mother begins flipping through pictures of a young Kishimoto Rika, immediately capturing his interest. Then she finds a photo taken at a manga and anime convention, leaving the boy completely stunned by the revelation. Yep, he had just unlocked a legendary tier secret. The mother explains that she used to be a cosplayer herself, and he concludes that her daughter inherited that passion. With a mischievous grin, she decides to reveal even more hidden stories from her daughter's past, shocking him all over again. Among the photographs is a picture of Kishimoto Rika dressed in gothic clothing while striking an unbelievably embarrassing pose. Suddenly, Kishimoto Rika bursts into the room and yells at her mother for showing those photos to her friend. Panicking, the young woman asks whether she really showed him the pictures, and her mother proudly confirms that she did. Looking at Rika's expression, he feels like she has entered full otaku overdrive mode. No turning back now. The girl desperately tries to explain that she no longer does cosplay, and that it was simply a youthful mistake. After saying goodbye, her mother leaves the room, abandoning the two of them in a painfully awkward atmosphere. With silence taking over the room, they remain kneeling there without knowing how to start a conversation. She asks whether he will keep her secret, and he replies that he does not even have anyone to tell. As tears begin gathering in her eyes, the young woman feels completely mortified by the entire situation. Trying to reassure her, he tells her that she really should not feel so embarrassed over a few photographs. The boy explains that almost everyone goes through a phase of exaggerated fantasies during adolescence, and she stares at him in confusion. Smiling, he admits that he went through an incredibly embarrassing phase back in middle school as well, catching her completely off guard. He then asks whether she would like to see a picture from that period, and the girl agrees out of curiosity. The protagonist scrolls through his phone and pulls up the image. Holding the device in his hand, he prepares to expose his own cringe-filled past. Kishimoto Rika stares at the photo in total disbelief, her jaw practically hitting the floor. Copying the exact pose from the picture, he proclaims that he can feel the black dragon sleeping within him awakening. Yeah, definitely the kind of memory people pray never resurfaces. The girl remarks that he used to look like a frail and skinny student and wonders how he ended up becoming so powerful. Calmly, he explains that he started working out shortly before entering high school. He then asks whether she dislikes the way he looks now, instantly making her flustered. With her face turning bright red, she admits that she likes him exactly the way he is now. The moment those words leave her mouth, embarrassment overwhelms her, and she covers her face with both hands. Caught off guard by her reaction, he softly says her name without understanding what is happening. Their hearts race as they quietly look at each other while the atmosphere grows increasingly romantic. Neither of them knows what to say or how to behave as they remain facing one another. Still kneeling across from each other, they continue exchanging glances while the emotional tension fills the room. Parting her lips slightly, the girl seems ready to say something important, yet the words refuse to come out. Blushing himself, he hides his feelings and simply keeps watching her. Flustered, she eventually blurts out that she only sees him as a good friend, making things even more awkward. He repeats those words in his mind and realizes that, to her, he is just a friend. In the end, they both agree that they are only friends, although the conversation becomes incredibly uncomfortable. Scratching the back of his head awkwardly, he stays silent beside her for a few moments. Afterward, he says her name again, and the girl looks at him curiously. The protagonist thanks her for inviting him over and giving him the chance to meet the person he admires most. The girl replies that it was nothing special and reminds him that he has been helping her ever since their first day of school. With a smile, he agrees, and little by little the conversation becomes comfortable again. He also mentions that he plans to visit her again someday, and she happily accepts. As the visit comes to an end and the sun begins to set, Kishimoto Rika asks him to stay a little longer, but he explains that it is getting late and he needs to head home for dinner. The girl suddenly remembers that her family will be traveling and that she will remain home by herself. He wishes her family a safe trip, and she jokingly says that he will probably miss her. The boy offers to help if anything goes wrong, and she asks how exactly he plans to do that. With a grin, he briefly imagines swimming all the way to Hawaii using his ridiculous strength, but quickly abandons the idea and says he would just buy a plane ticket instead. sometimes the normal option really is the best option. The two exchange smiles and promise to meet again at school soon. With a gentle expression, he says goodbye while watching her slowly walk away. The girl glances back one last time, blushing as she looks at him with unmistakable affection. Pressing a hand against her chest, she feels embarrassed as she reflects on everything that happened that day. Now alone, he starts thinking back on all the events they shared. He remembers the moment he found her lost and helped her figure out where she needed to go. He also recalls the lunch they shared together and how delicious the food had been. He reflects on all the effort she put into helping Tojo, something he deeply admires. Deep down, he concludes that Kishimoto Rika is a genuinely kind-hearted and caring person. He also remembers protecting her inside the crowded train so she would stay safe. He asked her to endure it a little longer, and she agreed despite her obvious embarrassment. Holding her hand so she would not get separated by the crowd, he guided her through the sea of people. With a smile, he revisits those memories and feels grateful for the friendship they have built together. He gives her one final farewell gesture while watching her fondly. The girl returns the smile and reflects on how special that day was for her. On the 5th day of Golden Week, our hero strolls peacefully through Akihabara. He walks through the bustling streets wearing his stylish black sneakers. While checking his phone, he thinks about how he has already purchased every manga he wanted. After finishing his shopping, he decides it is finally time to find something to eat. As he continues walking, he considers having lunch at his favorite ramen shop. Out of nowhere, a blue-haired girl rushes past at full speed while shouting for him to move aside. Startled, he turns around to see who is running with such urgency. The young woman stumbles and comes flying straight toward our hero in the clumsiest way imaginable. With a rushed leap, she clears a wall and ends up hurtling directly at him. The protagonist is left speechless by the sight and cannot believe his eyes. The girl crashes right into him, sending both of them tumbling to the ground. Face pressed against the pavement, he struggles to process what just happened. As he wipes blood from his nose, he wonders why these absurd situations always seem to find him. Clearly irritated, he quickly gets back to his feet and firmly grabs the girl's arm. After saving her, the only thing he receives is a disgusted look while she demands that he let her go. At that moment, a group of men appears while calling out for a girl named Sasha. She grabs his arm and desperately begs him to help her escape from the people chasing her. The young woman drags him into a dead-end alley, and he warns her that there is no way out. Remaining calm, he tells her to follow him, and she agrees without hesitation. The two quickly slip into a ramen shop to hide from their pursuers. While the men search outside, the protagonist quietly keeps track of their movements. Hidden beneath a table, they wait until the danger finally passes. Once things settle down, the girl thanks him for helping her, but he insists it was all pure coincidence. Smiling warmly, she introduces herself as Sasha and asks for his name. He introduces himself as well, and the girl immediately asks whether he is not Japanese and if he is visiting the country as a tourist. Irritated by the entire situation, the protagonist demands to know who those men were and what they wanted from her. After that, he tries to leave while wishing her good luck with her escape. The girl stops him and explains that things are complicated, but she desperately needs his assistance. She argues that common sense says a person should help a pretty girl first and ask questions later. Naturally, he is not buying that extremely convenient logic. When she realizes her argument failed, panic sets in and she offers him money, leaving him utterly stunned. She then pulls out a massive stack of cash in an attempt to persuade him. Faced with such an offer, he agrees to the deal and the two seal it with a handshake. Adjusting her hat, the young woman decides she can no longer keep the truth hidden from him. With a serious expression, she reveals that her father is a highly influential figure from a place called Russia. The protagonist is completely lost and barely understands what she is talking about. Even so, she continues her explanation without missing a beat. Eventually, she admits that the men from earlier were actually trying to kidnap her. Upon hearing that, he recognizes her as one of the characters from the manga Scramble Love. He remembers that she is Alexandra Romanova, one of the most beloved heroines in the series. After piecing everything together, he takes her to a clothing store to improve her disguise. A little later, the girl steps out of the fitting room looking completely different and asks for his opinion. He replies that the outfit is practical for moving around freely, and she decides to hire him as her bodyguard until 7 in the evening. The boy accepts the job and asks whether there are any interesting places nearby. With a smile, he points out that crowded locations are perfect for shaking off pursuers. He also notes that anyone chasing them would struggle to act with so many civilians around. Meanwhile, he recalls that her full name is Alexandra Romanova. Although everyone calls her Sasha, our hero thinks that according to the original story, she should have encountered Sakamoto Ryuji instead. Yet somehow she ended up running into him first. That makes him wonder whether he met her even before her official introduction in the plot. He has no idea whether he should get involved, but he also cannot understand why a heroine is being hunted like this. For a brief moment, he wonders if she tried to buy his cooperation because she looked down on him. He would have liked to say that out loud. Then again, the amount of money she offered was absolutely ridiculous. Trying to reassure himself, he decides that enduring 6 hours should not be too difficult. With a confident grin, the girl boasts that she is excellent at judging people's character. In her mind, she recalls his intimidating appearance and the overwhelming strength he displayed. That is exactly why she is convinced he can protect her for 6 hours without any trouble. She then announces that they need to keep moving before anyone tracks them down. But the protagonist suddenly tells her to stop. Their pursuers come charging toward them again, and he cannot understand how they found them so quickly. As they start running once more, he asks whether they are KGB agents, though Sasha has no clue what he means. A moment later, one of the men steps directly into his path. Our hero instantly shifts into a fighting stance. The attacker throws a fast punch, but he narrowly avoids the strike. With precise timing, he grabs the man and prepares to retaliate with his full strength. The pursuer is completely shocked by the protagonist's power. Wearing a challenging smile, the boy lifts him into the air with a single hand. The next second, he slams him into the ground with overwhelming force. The remaining henchmen watch the scene in total disbelief. Sasha and the protagonist glance back and realize the others have already started retreating. Without wasting time, he pushes her into a nearby alley and orders her to stay hidden. He then shuts the door and prepares to face the pursuers by himself. Judging by the way they move, he concludes that these men are far beyond ordinary street thugs. Yeah, the difficulty setting just got upgraded. The men completely surround him and get ready to attack together. But he believes that, unfortunately for them, he holds a massive advantage. In a romantic comedy, the bigger guy always comes out on top, so he decides to make use of that ridiculous advantage. Thanks to that, he effortlessly wipes out all the henchmen without even breaking a sweat. Afterward, he stares them down and warns them to back off because opponents at their level are no challenge to him. Suddenly, he senses a strange presence, causing his eyes to widen. An instant later, a surprise punch crashes into him and catches him completely off guard. As the impact lands, he groans in pain and wonders who managed to hit him. A bearded man wearing a black coat then appears and introduces himself as Captain Boris. The captain asks who this reckless fool is and admits that he turned out to be much stronger than expected. The protagonist immediately becomes cautious after realizing he is facing a genuinely dangerous opponent. For a moment, he wonders whether his rom-com protagonist advantage will work against someone like this. From a distance, Sasha watches everything in complete shock and silence. She shouts for him to be careful and warns him that appearances can be deceiving. The young woman insists that there is absolutely no way anyone can defeat Captain Boris in a fight. Our hero finally understands why she was so eager to hire him. With determination in his eyes, he prepares for the ultimate clash against the captain. He decides to end the fight as quickly as possible and focuses completely. The captain is caught off guard by his speed and immediately tries to defend himself. The boy lands a devastating blow, and a burst of purple energy erupts from the sheer force of the impact. Moving quickly, he grabs the captain by the face, leaving him utterly bewildered. Realizing how resilient his opponent is, he changes tactics in the middle of the battle. He locks onto the captain's wrist and prepares his next technique. Spinning rapidly, he uses his opponent's own momentum to hurl him a great distance away. Though a sharp pain tells him the captain managed to strike back, the captain catches him and applies a grappling hold that completely surprises our hero. He instantly recognizes it as one of the techniques taught by his former master. Wearing a confident smile, the captain believes the fight is already over. However, something feels wrong when he notices that the boy has not moved even a single inch. With incredible speed and technique, our hero turns the tables and locks him down from behind. The captain's anger erupts when he realizes he is now the one trapped in a submission hold. The pressure on his hip makes him cry out in pain as he struggles unsuccessfully to break free. Without warning, the young man hurls him through the air, sending the captain into panic at the display of overwhelming strength. A thunderous crash echoes through the area as he slams into the ground, completely defeated and unable to continue fighting. From a distance, Sasha watches the entire scene in utter disbelief. The remaining henchmen are equally stunned after seeing their leader brought down so easily. The protagonist stares at the captain lying on the pavement while considering what to do next. With a stern expression, he reminds him that joint locks can cause serious injuries and scolds him for his recklessness. The young woman simply cannot believe he managed to defeat Captain Boris entirely on his own. She wonders how anyone could possess such incredible power and looks at him with unconcealed admiration. Elsewhere, a man wearing dark sunglasses remains inside an abandoned warehouse. Holding a phone to his ear, he appears to be reporting an extremely important matter. He informs his superior that Captain Boris Sarov has been defeated during the capture operation. On the other end of the call, the boss refuses to believe it and insists that nobody in Japan should be capable of defeating him. The man describes the culprit as a tall, black-haired mixed-race young man. After hearing the description, the boss recalls an old legend and brings up the name Black Yasha. His suspicions are confirmed, and he wonders whether the legendary Black Yasha has truly returned. A message appears on a computer monitor asking whether Black Yasha has emerged from the shadows once again. Another message reports an incident in Akihabara and confirms that rumors are already spreading throughout Tokyo. As the story continues to circulate, someone seems to be investigating the matter with great interest. Meanwhile, inside a dark room, a mysterious young woman studies information connected to the legend of Black Yasha. She concludes that the newcomers know nothing about the subject and decides to investigate it herself. Her thoughts drift to the godlike martial arts tournament that took place in 1999. During that competition, an incredibly powerful fighter stood out while surrounded by a blue aura. But that was also where a mysterious ninja named Fumikotaro appeared out of nowhere. Despite fighting only once, he still reached the finals and ultimately became a living legend. The young woman quietly reflects while fitting all the pieces together in her mind. She begins to wonder if the legend of Fumikotaro has truly returned. Armed with this new lead, she rises to her feet determined to uncover the entire truth. The girl puts on her black jacket and prepares to begin a new mission. Ready to depart, she opens the door and steps outside with a clear objective. Once outside, she gazes over the city as a plan gradually forms in her mind. With unwavering determination, she tells her father to wait for her because she is already on her way. Back in the city, our hero and Sasha arrive at a maid cafe filled with girls wearing themed uniforms. The guy immediately suffers a critical hit of secondhand embarrassment and thinks the entire place is ridiculously over the top. He can barely believe this is actually a cafe, while the young woman insists that it is a must-have Japanese experience. One of the maids escorts them to a table and politely invites them to sit down. Now seated, Alexandra Romanova finally seems to be out of danger. Even so, he cannot help thinking that she attracts trouble like a magnet. As he looks through the menu, an odd feeling washes over him because of the cafe's unusual atmosphere. He just survived an intense battle, only to end up in a maid cafe. Priorities are wild sometimes. The guy complains that at this rate he will not be leaving the place for weeks, and she suggests it is probably because of an electromagnetic pulse. The young woman explains that combat squads use EMP devices to disable electronic equipment. She then reveals that E is a company that manufactures weapons, and he uses the opportunity to ask more about the alleged kidnapping. With a mischievous smile, she explains that she is the daughter of someone extremely influential within that organization. Suddenly, a cat-eared maid appears and proudly introduces herself as the cafe's biggest star. As she serves their meal, the young man thinks he is finally starting to adapt to otaku culture. However, the maid stops him and informs him that there is a mandatory ritual before eating. Wearing a charming smile, she asks him to repeat exactly what she says, and he immediately senses disaster approaching. Ready to begin the ceremony, the young woman strikes an adorable pose and forms a heart shape with her hands. She then casts a cute little spell, leaving the guy so bewildered that he can barely process what just happened. Confused, he asks why she cannot simply do it by herself. But the maid explains that it is a cafe rule and he has no way out. His face turns bright red, and cold sweat runs down his skin as unbearable embarrassment takes over. Having no other choice, he makes a heart with his hands and repeats the chant while Sasha bursts out laughing. The maid thanks him for participating, and the young woman declares it absolutely hilarious, though our hero is seconds away from exploding. Even emotionally drained, he finishes the meal and admits that, at the very least, the food was excellent. A short while later, the maid returns and cheerfully asks whether they enjoyed everything. She then reveals that there is a punishment for whoever finishes last, and proudly displays a pair of cat ears. The young man immediately freezes, and the maid confirms that the loser must accept the penalty. The punishment requires the loser to wear cat ears and end every sentence with Nia, triggering an instant panic attack. He asks whether there is any alternative, but Sasha simply tells him to win and everything will be fine. With a determined look, he declares that if those are the rules, he intends to win no matter what. A card game begins, and the young woman appears completely confident that victory is already hers. Unfortunately for the protagonist, he loses the match and is forced to put on the cat ears. Overwhelmed by embarrassment, he tries to remain silent, but the maid reminds him that he has to speak for the punishment to count. He angrily demands a rematch, while Sasha can barely stop laughing. The girl teases him by saying the cat ears look terrible on him, and he swears that next time he will be the winner. Once everything is finally over, the two leave the cafe, and the maid bids farewell to her master. Back outside, Sasha happily talks about how much fun she had, while he points out that he did not win a single game. She asks whether he is bothered by missing the tourist attractions and admits that she had an amazing time. As the day slowly comes to an end, the two walk quietly through the city streets. Suddenly, he stops walking and says there is something important he needs to tell her. The young woman then admits that the men he fought earlier were actually her father's bodyguards. She apologizes for lying and explains that she only snuck away from the hotel because she wanted to explore the city on her own. After clearing everything up, she tells him he can forget about it because she will contact her escorts and return to the hotel. She also sincerely thanks him for spending the day with her. But at that very moment, a helicopter appears overhead. With a bright smile on her face, the young woman seems delighted that her airborne rescue has finally arrived. From the helicopter, a blue-haired man shouts that he has finally found her. Both the protagonist and the girl look up in complete surprise. As the helicopter hovers in place, a mysterious figure leaps down from above and lands nearby. The blue-haired man scolds her for her reckless behavior and lectures her about all the trouble she caused. He then turns his attention to the young man and asks who the fool is that dared to get close to his princess. Annoyed, Sasha asks how he managed to track them down so quickly. He replies that this is a personal matter involving his beloved daughter. Then he steps forward with a stern expression, making the atmosphere instantly tense and heavy. The young woman tries to take all the blame, explaining that she was already on her way back, but he completely ignores her. At that moment, our hero realizes that this man is Sasha's father. He also finds it strange that someone from Lucia speaks Japanese so naturally with his daughter. The father mentions hearing rumors about Black Yasha's return, leaving Sasha completely confused. He then asks whether she became involved with him, while the protagonist points at himself without understanding what is happening. The man explains that a legendary mercenary disappeared without a trace 10 years ago. He then brings up the name Fumotaro, though the young man still has no idea why he is being dragged into this conversation. Without hesitation, he points directly at the protagonist and challenges him to a fight on the spot. His eyes are filled with obvious hostility. In a powerful voice, he declares that they will finish the battle they started 18 years ago. But after looking at him more carefully, he begins to hesitate, and the young man simply introduces himself as Kim. He then asks whether he knows Fumotaro, but our hero immediately denies it. After that answer, an awkward silence settles over everyone, and nobody knows what to say. Eventually, the man decides to let the matter go for now, while Sasha agrees despite having no clue what is happening. The protagonist concludes that the entire situation was caused by a huge misunderstanding due to his resemblance to someone else. Suddenly, the man turns around and asks how he managed to defeat Captain Boris. The young man recalls the giant fighter and apologizes, explaining that the battle happened because of a misunderstanding. He also clarifies that he believed Boris was a kidnapper, which is why he did not hold back at all. Just when the conversation seems finished, Sasha's father prepares to leave. However, right before departing, he turns around and unleashes an enormous blue aura while throwing a punch into the air. This man clearly refuses to do anything without maximum dramatic effect. The protagonist is completely stunned by such an overwhelming display of power. Clenching his fist tightly, Sasha's father demonstrates the true extent of his strength. Sasha screams Kim's name in panic. The strike hits the boy's backpack and completely destroys the manga he had just purchased. The moment he sees his manga reduced to scraps, the protagonist becomes furious and demands an explanation. With a calm smile, the man replies that he finds him interesting and challenges him to show what he can do. Annoyed, the young man drops his backpack and mourns the loss of his brand new manga. With tears gathering in his eyes, he swears that he will never forgive him for that. Consumed by rage, he steps forward, ready for the ultimate showdown against Sasha's father. The two exchange devastating blows, and every collision releases a wave of purple energy. Keeping a serious expression, the protagonist successfully blocks his opponent's attack. But Sasha's father refuses to stop and continues unleashing a barrage of fast and powerful strikes. He then fires off a heavy kick aimed at him, but our hero narrowly avoids it. Even so, he feels the tremendous force behind the attack and is forced to step back to keep his balance. The blue-haired man praises his strength, leaving the protagonist somewhat confused. Without any warning, he rushes forward again and lands a surprise attack during the fight. The protagonist cannot understand his behavior, and the man reveals that he considers him a genius. He also insists that an untrained student should never have been capable of defeating Boris. From his perspective, accomplishing something like that should be impossible. Because of that, he is convinced that the young man is a once-in-a-century prodigy. With determination in his eyes, our hero prepares for his opponent's next move. The man throws another powerful punch, while an intense blue aura wraps around his entire body. He then offers him a job and promises to help him unlock his full potential. The protagonist thinks the proposal sounds like something straight out of a battle shown in manga. At that moment, he becomes completely convinced that the world of Scramble Love is not a simple romantic comedy. He reaches the conclusion that it is actually an action-packed fighting series disguised as a romance. In his mind, he reviews all the bizarre romantic comedy events he has experienced up to this point. But now he understands that things are completely different, and that the story itself has changed. He finally realizes there is a reason he was brought into this world and forced to train relentlessly. He also understands why trouble always finds him, and why his strength has reached such ridiculous levels. All those clues lead him toward a single answer about the role he plays in this universe. What began as a romantic comedy has clearly evolved into a full-fledged battle manga. He is certain of it because the series is published in a magazine known for shonen stories. And in a publication like that, a purely romance-focused plot would struggle to survive. That is why he imagines the author eventually bowed to editorial pressure and turned the series into an action-packed fighting story. If that theory is true, the protagonist starts worrying seriously about what lies ahead. That would mean he will remain surrounded by monsters capable of crushing him at any moment. With furious tears forming in his eyes, he shouts that he will never forgive anyone for destroying his manga. The two lock eyes, and the protagonist charges at Sasha's father once more. Their fists collide head-on, unleashing a massive burst of purple energy that shakes the entire area. Despite the overwhelming force behind the impact, he manages to stop the attack using both arms. The blue-haired man immediately retaliates with a relentless barrage of fast and heavy strikes. He then lands a devastating kick that sends the young man soaring through the air. Fortunately, he regains control before hitting the ground and steadies himself. Sasha's father praises his strength once again, much to the protagonist's surprise. But without warning, the man rushes forward and launches another sudden attack. He then explains that he behaves this way because he sees the boy as an extraordinary talent. According to him, a normal student should never have been able to defeat Boris. In his eyes, such an accomplishment defies all reason. That is why he keeps insisting that the boy is a once-in-a-century genius. With a serious expression, the protagonist listens carefully to Sasha's father's explanation. The man gathers his energy while preparing his next move. Then he offers him a job once again, and promises he can help him become even greater. Hearing that proposal finally convinces the protagonist that this world is not part of a romance story. In his mind, the offer fits perfectly into the plot of a classic battle shonen manga. At first, everything really did seem like an ordinary romantic comedy, but the true reason he had been transported into this world was something entirely different. It explained the endless training, the constant fights, and the absurd strength that made him feel like a broken character. Every clue points toward a single conclusion. The series has become a battle manga. He is completely convinced because the work is serialized in Jam Sasha magazine. And in a magazine like that, a pure romance story would have very little chance of lasting. So he imagines the author eventually gave in to editorial demands and transformed the series into a combat-focused saga. If that theory is correct, then he will continue living among genuine monsters, with danger constantly hanging over his head. Yeah, the poor guy only wanted a rom-com life, and somehow unlocked final boss mode instead. And that is where this story comes to an end, for now. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and comment, "Reborn in the manga." The more comments there are, the sooner I can bring you the next part. I will also leave 2 recommended videos from the channel that I am sure you will enjoy. Until next time, friends.